Chapter 4683. The mountain where the third palatial lord lived was also filled with palaces and mansions. There were more than 14,000 young geniuses, immortal guards, servants and miscellaneous workers that lived there. Among the palatial lords, the third palatial lord was the most popular. He could get along well with anyone. Originally, everyone knew that Qian Zhan had come to the third palatial lord to sound him out. Such matters should have been discussed in a study, and there was even a need to activate a defensive array. However, no one expected that the third palatial lord would receive Qian Zhan in a pavilion in the middle of a lake in a garden. There was a circular stone table in the pavilion, and it was filled with divine fruits, pastries and tea. The third palatial lord sat by the table, and there were 2 guard captains standing outside the pavilion, respectfully waiting on him. Ji Tianqing and the 3 guards were left to wait by the lake. Qian Zhan crossed the stone bridge that was hundreds of feet long and went to the pavilion to meet the third palatial lord. After he entered the pavilion, he bowed respectfully to the third palatial lord. The third palatial lord smiled in response, and asked a few questions of concern before allowing him to sit down for a chat. Although Ji Tianqing was by the lake, and was 300 feet away from the pavilion, he could see the third palatial lord's face clearly. However, he could clearly see the third palace master's appearance and expression. He could also hear the conversation between the third palace master and hidden warrior. The third palatial lord was also a white-haired desolate race elder, but he was burly and energetic. He looked rather amiable. Qian Zhan was not stupid. He did not mention anything about the 7th palatial lord, and only recalled the past when the 3rd palatial lord took care of him. Then, he thanked the 3rd palatial lord, and took out a gift that he had prepared, and successfully gave it to him. After catching up with the 3rd palatial lord, the atmosphere turned warm and cordial. Qian Zhan then beat around the bush and gradually changed the topic, mentioning the 7th palatial lord, Dao Xingyun. He asked the 3rd palatial lord about Dao Xingyun's origins, and he did not hide the fact that he had met Dao Xingyun and had congratulated him. And all the palatial lords knew what had happened after he returned to the grand universe mystic realm. Since Qian Zhan was so frank, the 3rd palatial lord did not hide it from him. He gave him a basic introduction of Dao Xingyun. But in general, Dao Xingyun's origins were too mysterious, and it was difficult to tell the truth. However, the 3rd palace master did remind Qian Zhan of something. The 7th palace master said that Xing Yun and the 1st palace master seemed to be of the same race. Qian Zhan was immediately jolted awake, and after careful thought, he was right. That's right. Without careful observation, they would call all the races other than the desolate race the flood race, a foreign race. But in fact, the Xingyun had out. As for the flood tribe, there would also be some similar races. Through comparison, he discovered that the 7th palace master's Dao Xingyun was indeed the same as the 1st palace master's. Xinji Ii and Lord, the Lord palatial Lord Xingyun out. Based on the way the 3rd hallmaster dealt with things, he would never offend any of the hallmasters. He was the one who was able to make friends with both sides in the Taiyu temple. Therefore, the 3rd palace master's answer was within Hidden Battle's expectations. The 7th hallmaster joined the divine hall later, so we're not familiar with him and don't know much about him. Therefore, if you want me to make an evaluation of the 7th hallmaster, I really have nothing to say. However, the position of the 7th palace master was conferred by the 1st palace master. This was enough to prove the 1st palace master's trust and appreciation. Without the Grand Hallmaster, there would be no Taiyu Shrine today. Therefore, I firmly support and will always support Lord Hallmaster's decision. It was another bunch of empty words that didn't have any practical meaning. Qian Zhan heard it but couldn't refute it, and it wasn't good to continue asking. After all, the 3rd palace master's attitude was very clear. No matter what he thought of the 7th palace master, he would only keep it to himself. He would never say it out loud, nor would he go against the 1st palace master's decision. Qian Zhan chatted with the third hall master for another 2 hours. Only then did he decline the third hall master's invitation to stay and leave with Ji Tianqing and the guards. After returning to his residence, Qian Zhan was not in a hurry to prepare gifts to visit the fourth palace master. Like before, he entered the study alone to report the situation to Qian Gui. Although one of the brothers was in the Taiyu Mystery Land and the other was in Greenheart City, Qian Gui was instructing and teaching Qian Zhan from afar through messages. They cooperated well. At present, Qian Zhan hadn't found a breakthrough. However, Qian Zhan's performance was far better than before. Qian Zhan believed that he would gain something soon. The next morning, Qian Zhan regained his confidence. He prepared gifts and brought 3 guards, including Ji Tianqing, to visit the fourth palace master. In fact, Qian Zhan was the focus of everyone's attention recently. After returning to the Taiyu Mystery Land, he went to see the first palace master, the seventh palace master, the second palace master, and the third palace master. This news was already known by some people who were observant. This was especially true for those hall masters, who were able to grasp his movements even without leaving their residences. The fourth palace master and the fifth palace master should be mentally prepared and guessed that he was coming. Therefore, although Qian Zhan looked confident, he was actually very worried. The first 3 palace masters didn't express their opinions, or they couldn't help him. He could only pin his hopes on the fourth palace master and the fifth palace master to find a breakthrough. If these 2 palace masters couldn't help him, then he basically had no hope of turning the tables. He didn't need to say much to the fourth palace master when he visited the fourth palace master today. Based on the fourth palace master's attitude towards him, he could foresee the result. If the fourth palace master refused to see him or found some excuse to refuse, it was obvious that the fourth palace master couldn't help him. On the other hand, if the fourth palace master was willing to receive him, then he had hope of success. Not long after, Qian Zhan brought Ji Tianqing and the others to the palace where the fourth palace master lived. The guards at the gate of the palace had already expected his arrival, so they weren't surprised to see him. As soon as he stated his purpose, the guards at the gate turned and entered the palace to report to the fourth palace master. Qian Zhan waited at the gate of the palace for news, feeling more and more nervous. Fortunately, the guard who went to report didn't make him wait for too long. After a few seconds, the guard returned and bowed to him, saying, "Southern Patrol Governor, the palace master invites you in." Upon hearing this, Qian Zhan clearly heaved a sigh of relief. His hanging heart finally calmed down. Following that, he led Ji Tianqing and company into the palace's guest hall under the guard's lead. Just as he sat down and drank 2 mouthfuls of tea, the fourth palace master came to the hall. It was said that the fourth palace master was a somewhat reclusive and very stubborn person. Today, it was indeed so. The fourth palace master's appearance was that of a thin and dignified middle-aged man from the desolate race. His face was somewhat sinister and his body exuded a gloomy aura. Even when he exchanged pleasantries with Qian Zhan, he would keep a straight face. Occasionally, he would reveal a smile, but it was very unnatural and made people panic. Chapter 4684. If it were not for the seventh hallmaster, Qian Zhan would not have wanted to deal with the fourth hallmaster. Back then, the fourth hallmaster had not instructed him many times, but he had reprimanded and punished him many times. In addition, the fourth hallmaster was antisocial and not easy to get along with. He was afraid that he would offend the fourth hallmaster if he said something wrong. However, when he talked about this with his brother Qian Gui last night, Qian Gui thought that the fourth hallmaster could be the breakthrough. After all, the fourth hallmaster was not very popular and had no friendship with Qian Zhan. Naturally, he had no friendship with the seventh hallmaster. Furthermore, if there was a division of interests and power among the hallmasters, the appearance of the seventh hallmaster might cause dissatisfaction with the fourth hallmaster. It was because he believed Qian Gui's words that Qian Zhan came to visit the fourth hallmaster with hope. It turned out that Qian Gui had some intelligence. Qian Zhan and the fourth palace master had a simple exchange of greetings, and then talked about some old stories. Qian Zhan then began to talk about old friendships, and conveniently gave out the gift. No matter how cold the fourth hallmaster was, after receiving the gift and hearing a lot of words of gratitude, his face softened a lot. As the two chatted, they naturally talked about the seventh hallmaster, Dao Xingyan. At this time, the fourth hallmaster thought for a while and waved his hand to dismiss all the guards and maids. Qian Zhan's 4 guards were also asked to leave the hall and wait outside the door. In the entire reception hall, only the fourth hallmaster and Qian Zhan were left. Moreover, the fourth hallmaster waved his hand and shot out a few rays of divine light to activate the defensive array of the hall, isolating it from divine consciousness. Qian Zhan was inexplicably nervous when he saw the fourth hallmaster's behavior. His heart began to beat faster, and his heart was filled with excitement and anticipation. Obviously, he had realized that the fourth hallmaster was going to tell him some secrets, the kind that could not be heard by a third person. This was definitely good news for him. As expected. What the fourth palace master talked about next was about the seventh palace master, which was a rather sensitive topic. Qian Zhan, first of all, you have to understand that Dao Xingyan is the seventh hallmaster who was personally appointed by the first hallmaster. Other than the first hallmaster, no one can change this appointment. Don't even think about going against it. That's suicide. The way the fourth palace master spoke and his tone was very much in line with his usual style. Qian Zhan also understood this point and immediately gave up on the idea. The fourth hall master continued, although Dao Xingyan is indeed qualified to be the seventh hall master of the divine hall with his strength and realm, Dao Xingyan is not qualified to be the seventh hall master. Moreover, he was from the same clan as the first hall master. The first hall master had taken special care of him, so it was understandable that he was given the title of seventh hall master. However, we should all be clear that the first palace master is not someone who would act on his emotions. Hearing the fourth hall master's reminder, Qian Zhan's body trembled. He looked at the fourth hall master in shock and asked, "Lord Hall Master, you mean? Could it be that there are some twists and secrets behind this?" The fourth hallmaster glanced at him and said with an indifferent expression, "Of course there are hidden reasons. The first hallmaster has his own considerations. But with your current identity and status, I can't tell you too much. Moreover, you can't say it out loud. You can only figure it out in your heart." Qian Zhan recalled what Qian Gui had said to him and admired his elder brother's thinking and foresight. Therefore, he probed again, "Lord Hall Master, do you think it's possible that after the first Hall Master achieves a certain goal, he won't need the seventh Hall Master anymore?" The fourth Hall Master patted his shoulder and sneered, "Qian Zhan, your brain still can't work. If the first Hall Master can achieve a certain goal, it means that the seventh Hall Master is useful. Since he is useful to the temple, he will naturally continue to be the seventh Hall Master. You can only pray that he is useless to the temple. Only then will the temple give up on him." Qian Zhan was enlightened and finally understood the key point. Therefore, he continued to ask, hoping that the fourth Hall Master could give him more hints. Unfortunately, the fourth Hall Master indicated that he had said enough and could not reveal any more information. No matter how Qian Zhan beat around the bush or asked directly, he could not get any more information. After he asked too many questions, the fourth Hall Master's patience gradually wore thin and he took the initiative to ask him to leave. He was just short of asking him to leave. Qian Zhan could only stop while he was ahead. He hurriedly bowed to the fourth Hall Master and left. When he left the fourth Hall Master's residence, he was in a good mood and his face was calm. No matter what, he had gained a lot from this trip. First of all, the fourth Hall Master was willing to help and give him advice. Although the fourth Hall Master did not say anything, from his words and actions, it was obvious that he did not have any intention of protecting or supporting the seventh Hall Master. There might even be some division of power between them. The appearance of the seventh Hall Master affected his interests. Qian Zhan kept this in mind. After he returned to his residence, he contacted Qian Zhan to discuss the next step. He had conquered the fourth Hall Master. Next, his targets were only the fifth Hall Master and the sixth Hall Master. Although Ji Tianqing did not hear the conversation between Qian Zhan and the fourth Hall Master, he observed Qian Zhan's expression and reaction and knew that Qian Zhan had gained something. He could also guess that the fourth Hall Master must have reminded Qian Zhan and that he was not on good terms with the seventh Hall Master. Therefore, he waited patiently and Qian Zhan tested the fifth Hall Master and the sixth Hall Master's reactions. Another day passed. It was still early in the morning. Qian Zhan once again prepared gifts and brought along 4 guards to visit the fifth Hall Master. It was said that the fifth Hall Master was a very low-key person. Although he had the strength of the middle realm of the God Emperor, he did not have an obvious personality. On the surface, the fifth Hall Master was a very moderate person and was not eye-catching among the Hall Masters. Not to mention offending people and forming cliques, he rarely expressed his opinion when the Hall Masters discussed matters. He was a dispensable existence. Even so, Qian Zhan still had expectations for the fifth Hall Master's attitude. Not long after, Qian Zhan brought Ji Tianqing and the others to the Divine Palace where the fifth Hall Master lived. The guards guarding the gate of the Divine Palace seemed to have expected their arrival and calculated the time. When Qian Zhan stated his purpose, the guard immediately entered the Divine Palace to report. Not long after, the guard returned and told Qian Zhan that the fifth Hall Master was refining a furnace of elixirs. He had been in seclusion for almost 3 years and could not meet guests. Whether this was true or not, the fifth Hall Master's attitude was that he was not willing to help Qian Zhan, nor was he willing to be enemies with the seventh Hall Master. He was even more unwilling to go against the orders of the first Hall Master. This result was in line with the fifth Hall Master's usual style of doing things. Don't look for him if you have nothing to do, and don't look for him if you have something to do. Qian Zhan was a little disappointed, but he was not surprised. He could only respectfully present the gifts and leave with the guards. Next, he rested for a day. On the second day, he prepared another gift and reinvigorated himself. He brought 4 guards to visit the sixth Hall Master. This was the last of the Hall Masters. If he could not get the sixth Hall Master's help, there would be no hope. Chapter 4685. The sixth Palace Master's style was relatively complicated. His characteristics were not as obvious as those of the third Palace Master and the fifth Palace Master. One was very popular, while the other had no sense of existence. From the various things that had happened to the sixth Palace Master in the past tens of thousands of years, it could be judged that he was a very shrewd person. And this gave Qian Zhan confidence. After arriving at the palace where the sixth Palace Master lived, Qian Zhan stated his purpose and waited patiently outside the palace. The guard went into the Divine Palace to report, and it did not take long for him to return. Fortunately, he brought good news for Qian Zhan. Southern Patrol Commander, the Palace Master invites you. Such a short sentence made Qian Zhan breathe a sigh of relief and relax a lot. Then, he led Ji Tianqing and the others into the palace to meet the sixth Palace Master. Unlike the other Palace Masters, the sixth Palace Master met Qian Zhan in the study. On the surface, the sixth Palace Master did not look like the other Palace Masters, who wore splendid clothes and served tea in the living room. He met Qian Zhan in the study, which was somewhat casual. But he gave a suitable reason and explanation, saying that he was dealing with official business in the study, so he met Qian Zhan in the study. Moreover, Qian Zhan did not feel neglected. On the contrary, he was flattered and secretly delighted. Even a fool would know that the sixth Palace Master must have met him in the study to discuss some confidential matters. Moreover, only he and the sixth Palace Master were in the study. The door was closed and the defense formation was activated to isolate all divine senses. This made Qian Zhan's heart beat faster. He was pleasantly surprised and full of expectations. Ji Tianqing and the 3 guards stood outside the study under the eaves of the corridor. Not far away were the silver-armored guards guarding the study. Both sides were silent and did not communicate. But the momentum of the silver-armored guards was obviously stronger. No one could hear what was going on in the study, and no one dared to release their divine senses to explore the situation in the study. But everyone knew that the 6th Palace Master and Qian Zhan must be discussing some confidential matters and could not be disturbed. Time passed silently. There was no wind in the courtyard, and the air seemed to be still. The atmosphere was somewhat depressing. No one dared to make a sound or make any unnecessary movements. Only faint breathing could be heard in the courtyard outside the study. Fortunately, 2 hours later, the door to the study opened with a creak, breaking the silence in the courtyard. Qian Zhan walked out of the study with a calm expression. He turned around at the door and bowed towards the inside of the study before leaving with his guards. Although his expression was very calm, no clues could be seen. However, Ji Tianqing's observation was very detailed. He had long seen through Qian Zhan's calm expression, but his heart was actually jumping with joy. Needless to say, the 6th Palace Master must have revealed some secret to him, or even expressed his rejection of the 7th Palace Master, or his intention to help him. Otherwise, the hidden battle wouldn't have such a big reaction and such a change in mentality. Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing only possessed a guard named Yi Jingfeng. If he could take over the body of the guard captain and gain the trust and reliance of the hidden warrior, then he would have a chance to find out the secret. Not long after, everyone returned to their residence. As usual, Qian Zhan entered the study room to report the situation to his elder brother and discuss the next actions and countermeasures. He had visited all 7 palace masters, and each of them had expressed their stance. Now, he was certain that only the 4th palace master and the 6th palace master had a chance to help him. Next, how to make good use of these 2 trump cards became the focus and key. Another day passed. After visiting all 7 palace masters one by one, Qian Zhan also discussed countermeasures and plans with Qian Gui. However, today, he showed no signs of going out. He stayed in his residence obediently, meditating and adjusting his breathing. After all, he had been too active since returning to the great universe mystery realm. He had visited a palace master every day for several days. If he continued to run around, his performance would be too eye-catching and would definitely attract criticism. Qian Gui had also reminded him that he should rest for a few days and calm down. If he wanted to overthrow the 7th palace master and take back the position that originally belonged to him, it was not something that could be done overnight. On this night, in the great universe divine palace, a divine consciousness voice transmission was suddenly transmitted directly to the minds of the other 5 palace masters. The person who transmitted the divine consciousness voice transmission was naturally the 1st palace master. The ones who received the divine consciousness voice transmission were the 2nd palace master, the 3rd palace master, the 4th palace master, the 5th palace master, and the 6th palace master. The 7th palace master, Dao Xingyun, did not receive the message, and Qian Zhan was unaware of this matter. Not long after, the 5 palace masters who received the 1st palace master's divine consciousness voice transmission quietly left their residences. Under the cover of the night, they concealed their figures and auras and quietly rushed to the great universe divine palace. Without anyone noticing, they very tacitly entered the depths of the divine palace and gathered in an underground secret room. In the past tens of thousands of years, if there was an important meeting in the divine palace, the palace masters and many governors would gather in the conference hall to discuss it together. However, tonight was different. The 1st palace master had secretly gathered the 5 palace masters. Obviously, there were some confidential matters to discuss. After the 5 palace masters entered the secret room, they did not say a word and silently sat down at the oval conference table. Under the dim light, after the 5 palace masters sat down, they looked at each other and knew who had come and who had not, and had a plan in their hearts. Then, a tall figure walked out from the corner of the secret room and sat down at the head of the conference table. It was an old man with white hair and beard. His aura was unfathomable, as deep as the sea. The 5 palace masters hurriedly got up, bowed to the white-haired old man, and called out in unison, "First palace master." After the first palace master sat down, he raised his hand and motioned for the 5 palace masters to sit down. Then, he opened his mouth and said, "I believe that everyone has already guessed my intentions for gathering all of you here tonight. There were some things that everyone was well aware of, and there was no need for the first palace master to say it clearly." Although the 5 palace masters did not speak, they all nodded silently. The first palace master looked around and continued, "After Qian Zhan returned, he met with all of you in turn. His intentions are clear as day. Everyone, speak. What are your opinions and thoughts?" After his voice fell, the secret room was silent. The 5 palace masters were silent. No one was willing to speak first. The first palace master's gaze swept across everyone. Although he knew that the 3rd palace master was the peacemaker and the 5th palace master did not have a presence, he still called out their names first. "3rd palace master, 5th palace master, let's start with the 2 of you." Since their names were called out, the 3rd palace master and the 5th palace master could no longer remain silent. The 3rd palace master could only smile and say, "To me, the unity, stability, and development of the divine palace are far more important than anything else. I don't care whether there is a position as the 7th palace master or who becomes the 7th palace master. I respect and obey the 1st palace master's decision on this important matter." Chapter 4686. The 3rd palace master was still smooth and even-handed. He made it clear that the divine hall was the center and the 1st palace master was the leader. His words were watertight. The 1st palace master nodded slightly, satisfied with his attitude. Next, it was the 5th palace master's turn to express his opinion. The divine hall was founded by the 1st palace master. Without the 1st palace master, there would be no divine hall, and we would not be where we are today. I follow the 1st palace master's decision. The palace masters have handled the affairs of the divine hall very well. I am grateful and admiring. I only want to work hard and improve my strength as much as possible. If I can make more contributions to the divine hall in the future, I will not let down the divine hall's cultivation. The 5th palace master was still unwilling to take charge. He talked about other things as if it had nothing to do with him. The palace masters had long been used to his style and did not mind. The 1st palace master nodded slightly, and his eyes fell on the 2nd palace master, the 4th palace master, and the 6th palace master. The 1st palace master's eyes were calm and did not reveal any meaning or inclination. However, he had asked the 3rd palace master and the 5th palace master to express their opinions. This was already a signal. Which of the palace masters present was not an expert who was proficient in the ways of the world and understood people's hearts? Of course, they could guess what the 1st palace master wanted them to express and what he wanted to hear. The 2nd palace master was an expert second only to the 1st palace master. He was also the person in charge of the divine hall. His attitude and position were the most important. Therefore, everyone's eyes fell on him. The 2nd palace master said in a low voice, "The position of the 7th palace master was conferred by the 1st palace master himself. Of course, we will obey. However, I have been in charge of the affairs of the divine hall. I have been racking my brains and taking care of everything personally. I only want the divine hall to be strong and prosperous. No matter who becomes the 7th palace master, or if there will be more palace masters in the future, I only want to see if he can make contributions to the divine hall. If he is useless to the divine hall, or even a burden and disaster to the divine hall, I will oppose it no matter who it is. As the person in charge of the affairs of the divine hall, the second palace master had the right and confidence to say this. Furthermore, his attitude and position had to be fair, just, and resolute. Not only could he not form cliques and cliques, but he also had to enforce the law impartially and remonstrance. If the other palace masters did not dare to say it, he would say it. If the other hall masters did not dare to offend him, then he would. Only in this way could he have enough prestige and deterrence in the divine hall, and only then could the head hall master trust and put him in an important position. If he was like the third palace master and the fifth palace master, whose stance on this matter was unclear and whose words were tactful, then the first palace master would have to reevaluate him. Very good. Contrary to everyone's expectations, the first palace master, who had not said anything until now, said these two words to the second palace master. After the third hall master and the fifth hall master expressed their opinions, he only nodded slightly and did not say a single word. In the end, only the fourth hall master and the sixth hall master remained. Everyone was well aware that the two of them had met Hidden Warrior before and even had a conversation with him. If there was anyone among the palace masters who harbored prejudice against the seventh palace master and could possibly help in the hidden battle, it could only be the two of them. The atmosphere in the secret room changed. It was a little heavy and oppressive, as if a storm was coming. Everyone understood that the fourth palace master and the sixth palace master would not easily change their attitudes and standpoints. If the head palace master could change their minds just by gathering everyone for a secret discussion, then it could not be called an attitude or position. As expected. The fourth palace master was the first to speak. First palace master, and all the palace masters present, I believe there is no need for me to say it. Everyone understands. Since the establishment of the divine hall tens of thousands of years ago, the star of origin has always been peaceful. Basically, nothing major has happened. Between the various divine halls, there are no deep conflicts or hatred, so it is impossible for there to be a conflict or war. Our Taiyu shrine has been able to develop and grow steadily, and a large part of that is due to the rules and system we use to select talents. Even the various hall masters and deputy hall masters, as well as the numerous city lords, have to go through strict vetting and evaluation before they can be appointed. All the important positions are appointed to our desolate race citizens. Not only do we know their backgrounds, origins and experiences, we also believe in their loyalty. If a city lord or a hall master is like that, what more a palace master? There was no doubt that although the fourth palace master did not say it explicitly, he had firmly expressed his opposition to the head palace master using Dao Xingyun, a foreign race god emperor of unknown origins. The head palace master raised his eyebrows and asked in a deep voice, "Do you mean that I am rash and reckless in appointing Dao Xingyun as the seventh palace master?" Hearing this, the other palace masters broke out in cold sweat for the fourth palace master. There was no other way. His words were too sharp, and that was what he meant. Before the fourth palace master could explain, the sixth palace master had already answered, "First palace master, please calm down. You are the founder of the Taiyu shrine, so of course we do not dare to criticize you like this. But I have the same thoughts as the fourth palace master. I hope you can think twice before you act. The rules and practices of the divine hall that have been passed down for tens of thousands of years should not be broken so easily. Otherwise, there will be endless trouble." The head palace master frowned and stared sternly at the fourth palace master and the sixth palace master. He did not refute for the time being. The sixth palace master continued, "I hope the head palace master can see clearly. We only dare to criticize you impartially for the sake of the divine hall's stability and interests. Just as the second palace master said, we have developed steadily to this point. In fact, one more god emperor or one less god emperor does not have much of an impact. If we must promote a god emperor to be the palace master, then he must be someone who is beneficial to the divine hall and can make contributions. At first, all of us were like you. We thought that Dao Xingyun was the chosen one we were looking for and could help us unravel the mystery of eternal life. But he admitted that he was not the chosen one and had no understanding of the Chaos Sea and the Gate of Heavenly Tao. Since that is the case, how can he join the Palace Master and take the position of the 7th Palace Master? The 4th Palace Master and I sincerely request the head Palace Master to retract your order. That's right. Before Dao Xingyun joined the Taiyu Shrine, he had been in contact with the Taiyu Shrine for several years. At that time, the Palace Masters all thought that Dao Xingyun was the chosen one they were looking for. But later, before the head Palace Master appointed Dao Xingyun as the 7th Palace Master, he asked this question. Dao Xingyun told the Palace Masters with certainty that he was not the chosen one the Divine Hall was looking for. He did not know anything about the Chaos Sea or the Gate of Heavenly Tao. Even so, the head Palace Master still appreciated him as usual and appointed him as the 7th Palace Master. As for the other Palace Masters, they started to feel displeased. Especially after Dao Xingyun was appointed as the 7th Palace Master, the head Palace Master not only dispatched craftsmen and guards to help him build the divine palace and house, but also assigned him authority and military strength. These were all rights that were taken from the hands of the other Palace Masters. Naturally, the Palace Masters were dissatisfied. Chapter 4687. Although some of the power in the hands of the Hall Masters had been divided, some of them did not express their displeasure. However, some of the Palace Masters did not want to say it out loud, nor did they want to express their dissatisfaction. Only the 4th Palace Master and the 6th Palace Master had a firm attitude. The first Hall Master knew that they were dissatisfied, so he could only comfort them and ask them to look at the big picture. The big picture had always been an invisible hat. Once it was put on, no one could escape. Even if the 4th Hall Master and the 6th Hall Master were dissatisfied, they could only listen to the 1st Hall Master's advice and did not say anything else. Otherwise, wouldn't they become selfish people who did not care about the interests of the temple and ignored the big picture? However, the dissatisfaction in their hearts did not disappear. It was only temporarily suppressed. With the 1st Hall Master's wisdom, of course, he would not end the secret meeting just like that. Otherwise, tonight's secret meeting would be useless. The 1st Hall Master tapped the table lightly with his right index and middle fingers. After a few times, he said in a dignified tone, "After I conferred the title of 7th Hall Master, I did make a small adjustment to everyone's jurisdiction and scope of power. I believe everyone feels the same. Since you are the Hall Master of the temple, no one wants to be a Hall Master in name only. Everyone wants to have a certain amount of power. Therefore, it is reasonable for me to do that. Also, I have called everyone here tonight to announce something. 20 years later, I will personally lead a few Hall Masters and a group of elite divine kings to explore the door of Heaven Way in the Chaos Sea. Even if 7th Hall Master does not admit it and does not think that he is the chosen one, we cannot miss a glimmer of hope. We have to try. The next 20 years is for everyone to prepare." Without a doubt, the 1st Hall Master's question successfully diverted everyone's attention. Especially the 2nd Hall Master, the 3rd Hall Master, and the 5th Hall Master, they were even more excited. They asked how many people they needed to prepare for the trip to the Chaos Sea and the route they should take. The 4th Hall Master and the 6th Hall Master looked at each other. They had heard some meaningful information from the 1st Hall Master's decision. They roughly understood that the 1st Hall Master thought highly of the 7th Hall Master, but the 1st Hall Master still had hope that the 7th Hall Master could reveal the secret of the door of Heaven Way. Of course, the 7th Hall Master's position was already a fact. He had already shown that he was not the chosen one. In this way, even if the 7th Hall Master was unable to uncover the secret of the Gate of Heaven, it would not affect his position and the 1st Hall Master would not revoke his position. The 4th Palace Master thought for a moment and asked, "1st Palace Master, we've actually discussed this a few years ago. We should head to the Chaos Sea earlier to explore the door of heavenly Tao. We only need a month or two to prepare, and we'll be able to raise enough troops. It won't take as long as 20 years. Isn't it better for the Divine Palace to act earlier? The sixth Palace Master hurriedly nodded in agreement with the fourth Palace Master's suggestion. The first Palace Master waved his hand and said in a low voice, "There is something that the seventh Palace Master reported to me alone. You are not aware of it yet. In fact, more than 10 years ago, several God Emperor powerhouses came from my hometown and entered the Star of Origin. They were scattered all over the Star of Origin and had already established contact with the other temples. There were even some who had joined the other divine palaces and become one of the hall masters of those divine palaces. Just as you thought, those divine palaces treated the God Emperor they met as the chosen one they were searching for." Ha ha ha. Thinking back to 30,000 years ago, I was the one who said the words Heaven's Chosen One. Upon hearing this secret, the Palace Masters were shocked. They revealed expressions of disbelief and exclaimed in low voices. What? Other than the Star of Origin, there are other powerhouses in the vast universe who can reach the God Emperor realm. And it's not just one God Emperor. Several God Emperors appeared at once. Oh my God! Did those God Emperor powerhouses all come from the first Palace Master's hometown? What kind of world is that? How can it compare to the Star of Origin and give birth to so many God Emperors? If we can leave the Star of Origin, I really want to see the world where the first Palace Master once lived. In that case, the seventh Palace Master, Dao Xingyan, is also one of those God Emperors. The Palace Masters sighed in shock and asked the first Palace Master about how magnificent the world he once lived in was. However, the first Palace Master had left the divine realm for more than 90,000 years. Many of his memories had slowly become blurry. Only a few important and unforgettable scenes could still be retained in his mind. And those past events were exactly what he did not want to mention. Seeing that the atmosphere in the secret room had become lively, the Palace Master's attention was diverted and they were all discussing this matter in low voices. The first Palace Master knocked on the table with his finger again and said in a deep voice, "Isn't your focus a little off? Shouldn't you be more interested in the reactions of those divine palaces and their actions?" The Palace Masters finally realized that they had indeed gone off topic and quickly stopped the discussion. "Yes, I was just about to ask the first Palace Master, what did those divine palaces do after encountering those God Emperors of other races?" They regarded those God Emperors of other races as heaven's chosen ones and accepted them into the divine palaces. They even conferred the title of Palace Master. Most likely, they couldn't wait to enter the Chaos Sea and explore the gate of heavenly Tao. First Palace Master, did those divine palaces hurriedly gather their men and bring the God Emperors of other races into the Chaos Sea? This secret discussion was finally brought back on track by the second Palace Master and the third Palace Master. The first Palace Master nodded and said in a dignified tone, "That's right. Just as you thought, after the Shangqing Divine Palace accepted one of the God Emperors into the Divine Palaces and conferred him as the sixth Palace Master, they couldn't wait to gather their troops and enter the Chaos Sea to explore the gate of heavenly Tao." Seeing that the first Palace Master had stopped, the Palace Master's curiosity was aroused and they quickly asked. What was the result? Did they succeed? Was that God Emperor of other races the God Emperor of Shangqing Divine Palace believed him to be heaven's chosen one? The sixth Palace Master of Shangqing Divine Palace. What realm is that guy in? The first Palace Master revealed a contemptuous sneer and said, the result was of course failure. The God Emperor of Shangqing Divine Palace was not heaven's chosen one at all. He tried twice but failed to ignite the eternal fire. He rashly touched the gate of heavenly Tao and was severely injured. In that operation, Shangqing Divine Palace was intercepted by the Sea Beast clan and suffered heavy casualties. As for the God Emperor of the Divine Clan, he was also stranded in the depths of the Chaos Sea. It is said that he was killed by two ancient creatures. Hearing this, the palace masters heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Some of them even showed a gloating expression. Although Shangqing Divine Palace and Taiyu Shrine did not have a great enmity, they were neighbors and had accumulated some friction and conflicts over tens of thousands of years. If Shangqing Divine Palace found the heaven's chosen one and successfully opened the gate of heavenly Tao, the palace masters of Taiyu Shrine would definitely be envious and jealous. Chapter 4688. Since the Shangqing Temple's operation had failed, the Taiyu Shrine still had a great chance. Moreover, in the previous operation, the elite troops of the Shangqing Temple were severely injured, which must have been a big blow to the Shangqing Temple. How could the temple masters of the Taiyu Shrine not be secretly happy? How could they not gloat? Of course, while mocking and ridiculing the Shangqing Temple, the temple masters did not forget to get to the bottom of it and continue to inquire about the information. Great Temple Master, did the seventh Temple Master tell you all this information? In terms of time, the seventh Temple Master had already come to the territory of the temple and contacted us when these things happened. Yes. The seventh Temple Master said himself that after he came to the Star of Origin, the first thing he contacted was us. So, he has never been to the Shangqing Temple, how could he know those things? The great Temple Master explained, the several God Emperors who ascended to the Star of Origin from the God realm are connected to each other. If they did not join forces, how could they enter the Star of Origin at the same time? However, part of the information I just shared was reported by the seventh Hall Master, and the other part was information gathered by my spies. Only the Temple Masters knew that the great Temple Master had secretly trained a group of elite soldiers to sneak into the territory of other temples and be responsible for collecting information and intelligence. Of course, the other temples would do the same and also send spies to lurk in the territory of the Taiyu Shrine. These were tacit secrets. As long as there was no big conflict or war, the temples would not expose each other. Everyone suddenly understood and naturally did not doubt the information that the great Temple Master said. The third Temple Master asked again, Great Temple Master, the Shangqing Temple has fallen into such a miserable state. What about the Kongming Temple? They should have also encountered a race, the God Clan. It should be the God Emperor of the God Clan. What about the Kongming Temple? The great Temple Master nodded and explained, the Kongming Temple is too far away from us. The Shangqing Temple is in the middle and there are many unknown places. Therefore, there are very few spies lurking in the Kongming Temple, and the information and intelligence obtained is also very limited. The Kongming Temple did meet a God Emperor of the God Clan and invited him to join the Kongming Temple with great fanfare and made him a Temple Master. But for some reason, the God Emperor disappeared before the ceremony for the new Temple Master took office. In addition, I don't know what they want to do, they want to kill God Clan. It is said that tens of thousands of soldiers were killed or injured or killed Temple. Hearing this news, the Hall Masters gloated even more, and their discussion became even more heated. No way. The Shangqing Temple is already unlucky enough, but the Kongming Temple is even more unlucky. The Shangqing Temple met the God Emperor of the God race. At least they brought him to the Chaos Sea to verify it. Even if they suffered heavy casualties, it was worth it. The Kongming Temple is more tragic. The new Temple Master has not taken office yet. They did not have time to rush to the Chaos Sea, and the new Temple Master is gone. I don't know if the God Emperor that the Kongming Temple met is the one chosen by heaven. Who would know? I don't think the possibility is high. Otherwise, the Kongming Temple would go crazy and look for him all over the world. Just as the Hall Masters were discussing animatedly, an unintentional remark suddenly came out, causing the entire secret chamber to fall into silence. Strange, why are those God Emperors from the God realm so evil? Which temple would be unlucky to meet them? Such an abrupt and pointed sentence made everyone quiet down. Not only the great Temple Master, but the other Temple Masters also looked at the speaker at the same time. The fourth temple master, the owner of the sentence just now, realized that his subconscious remark seemed to have offended the seventh temple master. Facing the strange looks of the other temple masters, he quickly waved his hand and said, "Everyone, don't misunderstand. I just said it unintentionally. I don't mean to target anyone." With the fourth temple master's interference, the other temple masters could not continue their discussion. Of course, they also muttered in their hearts and secretly thought, the God Emperor that the Shangqing temple met did not solve the mystery of eternal life and suffered heavy casualties. The Kongming temple met the God Emperor of the Shangqing tribe. They did not even have time to go to the Chaos Sea before they were thrown into chaos and disappeared. One incident can be considered a coincidence, but two temples met the same thing. Isn't this too strange? Now that we met Dao Xingyun and the great temple master made him the seventh temple master, isn't that? People's hearts were unpredictable, and the most terrible thing for powerhouses who had their own thoughts was to be suspicious of each other. Moreover, the temple master's suspicions and concerns about the seventh temple master were not groundless. There were two precedents. The great temple master also realized that even if the temple masters did not say it out loud, they would definitely have suspicions in their hearts. Therefore, he took the initiative to say, "Fourth temple master, you worry too much. I already knew about these things, so how could I not be prepared? What happened to the Kongming temple and their war with the Beast clan, I don't know the specific reasons, so I won't comment. However, what happened to the Shangqing temple could not be considered a coincidence. It could be said that it was inevitable. Firstly, after the Shangqing temple met the God Emperor of the Shangqing tribe, they acted too impatiently. They hurriedly gathered their troops and rushed to the Chaos Sea. This is the main reason, and also a lesson from the past. We have to be vigilant. That's why I've decided to use 20 years to prepare for it. Secondly, countless sea beast clans have been entrenched in the Chaos Sea, resisting the entry of all other tribes. The Shangqing temple's fleet will definitely be besieged by the Sea Beast clan when they enter the Chaos Sea. Not to mention them, even we will have to fight with the Sea Beast clan when we enter the Chaos Sea in the future. This is why I emphasize to you that you must be fully prepared before you take action. The few temple masters remained silent and nodded to express their agreement. The fourth temple master and the sixth temple master, who were doubtful and negative towards the seventh temple master, silently looked at each other and chose to give up. This was because they had already said what they needed to say. If they continued to sow discord, it would be counterproductive. Tonight's secret meeting had successfully planted a shadow in the hearts of the other temple masters who had remained neutral. To the fourth temple master and the sixth temple master, their goal had been achieved. The first temple master was obviously a little dispirited and did not want to say more to the temple masters who had different thoughts. Anyway, his words were orders. The temple masters could only obey and could not object. There was no need to explain too much. Everything would be done according to his orders. Tonight's secret meeting will end here. After you return, begin to gather your men and prepare for the operation 20 years later. You must remember that the failure of the Shangqing temple is a lesson from the past. In the past 20,000 years, we have entered the Chaos Sea many times, and each time we had to pay a huge price. However, this time, I want you to do your best to minimize the casualties. Chapter 4689. After the secret meeting in the middle of the night, the temple masters left one after another. Under the cover of the night, they hid their traces and auras and quietly returned to their respective residences. As for the head temple master's order, they would carry it out from tomorrow onwards. The head temple master still sat alone at the oval table in the secret room. He sat at the head of the table, his figure hidden in the darkness, and did not speak for a long time. He was domineering, bold, and determined, but he also had his own persistence. The Taiyu shrine was founded by him, and the entire shrine belonged to him. He could appoint whoever he wanted as the temple master. This was understandable. However, In the past tens of thousands of years, he had appointed 5 temple masters, and it had always been harmonious and smooth. Only this time, when he appointed the 7th temple master, it set off a wave in the shrine. Even the other temple masters had their own opinions and objections. He felt a sense of danger. An invisible threat seemed to be closing in. Firstly, his domineering power and supreme status seemed to have been shaken a little. Secondly, he felt a little uneasy. He had a vague premonition that the peace of the Taiyu shrine for many years was about to be broken. This made him doubt whether his decision this time was correct or not. Although the head temple master was domineering, powerful, and bold, he was not muddle-headed, arrogant, or complacent. He would often reflect and reflect. Just like now, when the Taiyu shrine encountered a problem, there was a gap between the temple masters. He also felt a sense of crisis. In the following days, the Taiyu mystery realm returned to peace. There were no more disturbances. The temple masters were actively preparing for war. They followed the head temple master's order and gathered elite troops. A few days later, the 7th temple master Dao Xingyun privately visited the head temple master. The excuse was to ask the head temple master some questions about cultivation, and to apply for a batch of materials to expand the shrine and residence. But in fact, Dao Xingyun was using this opportunity to sound out the head temple master and inquire about the attitudes of the other temple masters. Of course, he knew that the purpose of visiting the other temple masters before the hidden battle was to find allies to deal with him. But this kind of thing could not be said directly. They could only discuss and speculate in private. No one knew the details of the conversation between the first palace master and Dao Xingyun. However, Dao Xingyun had a secret conversation with the first hall master for 4 hours. When he left the great universe divine palace, his expression was calm and his aura was indifferent. It was as if all the doubts in his heart had been dispelled. However, none of the hall masters were easy to deal with. Everyone had their own thoughts and schemes, so who could see through each other? Although the hall masters were not fighting and scheming against each other, they were still outwardly united but inwardly divided, each harboring their own thoughts. On the other side, Qian Zhan, who had been meditating in his residence for 10 days, finally couldn't take it anymore. Previously, he had discussed the follow-up plan with Qian Gui. Qian Gui had advised him to endure for a few days and not be too impatient. During this period, he could observe the reactions of the 4th hall master and the 6th hall master and see if they would make the first move. Only when the 4th palace master and the 6th palace master stepped forward would there be a chance for him to cooperate. If he took the initiative to attack first, he would only lose miserably. However, 10 days had passed and there was no movement from the 4th hall master and the 6th hall master. The 7th hall master was also calm and steady. It was as if nothing had happened. Everyone was still living in harmony. How could Qian Zhan endure this? He was anxious, but there was nothing he could do. He stayed alone in the study for an entire day, but he couldn't sit still. At night, he couldn't take it anymore and finally decided to go to the 6th hall master personally to ask what was going on. Ever since he returned to the great universe mystery land, he had brought along Ji Tianqing, 3 guards, and the guard captain every time he went out. It had long become a habit. This time, visiting the 6th hall master late at night was no exception. He still brought along Ji Tianqing and the others. Qian Zhan knew that everyone was watching him. With his strength and means, even if he deliberately hid, he couldn't escape the detection of the hall masters. Since that was the case, he might as well not disguise and hide. Wherever he went, he would be open and aboveboard. Reading benefits, give you a cash red packet. Follow VX Public, to receive it. This way, he would appear more upright and wouldn't leave a topic for others to gossip about. The 6th hall master still received him in the study. This time, he didn't plan to talk to him about anything too confidential. He didn't even activate the defense array of the study. Ji Tianqing and a few guards stood outside the study and could also hear their conversation. After Qianzhan entered the study, he bowed and greeted the sixth hall master. After a few simple greetings, Qianzhan stated his purpose for coming. He hoped to receive guidance from the sixth hall master. Of course, the sixth hall master understood what he meant, but he didn't say it out loud. Instead, he reminded him, no matter what, you have to prioritize the overall situation and the interests of the temple. The Lord Hall Master has already given the order that he will personally lead the troops to the Chaos Sea in 20 years. These 20 years are the preparation time that the Lord Hall Master gave us to prepare the troops. Qianzhan, you are the Southern Patrol Commander. Your main task is to represent the temple to patrol the south and protect the peace and stability of the region. It has been more than 10 days since you came back to debrief and report. It won't be long before you have to return to the south and continue your mission. So, wait for the Lord Hall Master's order. The sixth Hall Master didn't mention anything about the seventh Hall Master, but the two things he mentioned were related to the seventh Hall Master. He believed that if Qianzhan wasn't too stupid, he would definitely understand what he meant. Qianzhan was stunned on the spot. He frowned with a grave expression. His attention was on the second thing, and he didn't have time to think about the meaning of the first thing. So much so that his mind was filled with the thought, I haven't done anything yet, and I have to leave the great universe mystery realm. The sixth Hall Master saw his concerns and thoughts, and guessed what he wanted to say. But the sixth Hall Master didn't want to say anything more. He waved his hand and said, all right, I still have a lot of official business to deal with. You can leave. His words were an order for him to leave. Even if Qianzhan had a lot to say, he couldn't say it out loud. He could only bow and leave the study gloomily. On the way back to his residence, Qianzhan's expression was gloomy, and his mood was a little down. He thought that he had found the fourth Hall Master and the sixth Hall Master to rely on. He didn't expect that they didn't do anything, and their attitudes had changed so much. How could this be? The sixth Hall Master was willing to help me before. Why did he have such an attitude tonight? Could it be that the Lord Hall Master found them and pressured them? Qianzhan frowned and pondered in his heart. Unknowingly, everyone returned to their residence. As usual, Qianzhan walked to the study alone, and the guards returned to their rooms to rest. But tonight's situation was a little special. The guard captain and the other two guards had left. Only Ji Tianqing dawdled until the end. Seeing that Qianzhan was gloomy and walking slowly to the study, he quietly followed. Without any warning, he suddenly said, actually, Governor, you're overthinking. What happened tonight is actually a good thing for you. Chapter 4690. Qianzhan was pondering and trying to figure out the sixth palace master's words. He wanted to analyze the sixth palace master's attitude and position. The sudden voice interrupted his thoughts and made him stop in his tracks. He turned to look at Ji Tianqing and frowned. Why aren't you going back to rest? Why are you following me? Qianzhan's expression was dignified and his tone was somewhat displeased. After all, the guard in front of him had overstepped his boundaries and his actions were somewhat presumptuous. However, Ji Tianqing was neither servile nor overbearing as he explained, as the governor's right-hand guard, it's my duty to share the governor's worries and solve his problems. Thanks to the governor's high regard, I was fortunate enough to follow you during this period of time and have seen the true appearance and dignity of the palace masters. After analyzing the words and deeds of the palace masters, I have some thoughts and conjectures in my heart and hope to be of help to the governor. If there are any mistakes, please correct me, Governor. Qianzhan originally wanted to reprimand Ji Tianqing, but seeing that he spoke in an orderly and reasonable manner, he suppressed the anger in his heart. He sized up Ji Tianqing with a scrutinizing gaze and asked, "You're called?" E what? Reporting to the governor, I am Yi Jingfeng. Ji Tianqing bowed slightly. Oh. Yi Jingfeng, I remember you. Qianzhan revealed a look of realization and asked again, I remember that you have always been taciturn and don't like to be in the limelight. Why are you so bold tonight to give me pointers? Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and bowed, pretending to be terrified. Governor, please calm down. I am not qualified to give you pointers. I just have some immature conjectures in my heart, please correct me. In the past, I did not have enough experience and the governor handled everything in an orderly and perfect manner. Of course, I did not think too much. But the situation now is too complicated. This matter is related to your future. I am also worried for you, so I thought about it carefully for a long time. No matter how many times he tried to flatter her, it was impossible to penetrate her. Ji Tianqing had long since understood hidden warfare's character. Of course, these few words made hidden warfare very happy. Qian Zhan's expression eased a lot, and he led him to the study. Okay. It's rare for someone to be willing to think for me and provide me with references and opinions. Let's go to the study and talk about it slowly. I have rewards for you. Even if you don't do well, I won't punish you. Hidden Zhan's mood clearly eased a lot, and the haze in his eyes was swept away. Ji Tianqing silently followed him into the study, a playful smile flashing through his eyes. Ever since he possessed Yi Jingfeng, had he been waiting for the right opportunity? When would he be able to indirectly control a hidden battle? That would make it easier to carry out his plan. How many times did he bring him out in the past? He remained silent and kept a low profile. This was to establish a foundation of trust. After following Qian Zhan out a few times, he had left a trustworthy impression in Qian Zhan's heart. Would he seize the opportunity to strike again tonight? Only then would success be guaranteed. If he had suggested this a few days ago, it would definitely have backfired and aroused the hidden battle's suspicion. After Ji Tianqing and Qian Zhan entered the study, Qian Zhan waved his hand and cast a spell, activating the study's defensive formation. A conversation between the two of them? It would involve some secrets, so of course, it couldn't be overheard by outsiders. After Qian Zhan sat down, he couldn't wait to ask, say it. You said that tonight's matter is actually a good thing for me. What do you mean? Ji Tianqing smiled and asked, does the governor feel that the sixth palace master's attitude is a little strange tonight? It's different from before. Qian Zhan didn't say anything, only nodding. Ji Tianqing explained in a firm and confident tone, first of all, the governor has to believe in one thing. Those palace masters are all experts with wisdom and shrewdness. They won't act on impulse, and won't change their orders or waver. When you visited the fourth palace master and the sixth palace master, they clearly knew that others were watching, but they still met you and expressed their willingness to help you. This shows that the fourth palace master and the sixth palace master are also dissatisfied with the seventh palace master. Even if there's no conflict, there's still some estrangement. They clearly know that the seventh palace master was appointed by the first palace master, but they still have such an attitude. So, even if the first palace master talks to them or puts pressure on them, they won't compromise easily. Qian Zhan's eyes suddenly lit up, and he nodded repeatedly, that's right. After your analysis, this is indeed the case. You've said it well, continue. He already believed Ji Tianqing's words, and believed that the fourth and sixth palace master wouldn't change their stance easily. But he still didn't quite understand why the sixth palace master's attitude was so cold tonight. Ji Tianqing continued, perhaps to the governor, the seventh palace master is blocking your future and taking the position that belongs to you. But in fact, the fourth palace master and the sixth palace master feel the same way. The people who are more anxious now are them, not you. But the sixth palace master's attitude tonight is a little cold, and he's very calm and indifferent. What does this mean? The situation is set, and they have a well-thought-out plan. Qian Zhan frowned and thought for a while, and vaguely understood something. You're referring to the matter that the sixth palace master mentioned? Ji Tianqing nodded and smiled, the sixth palace master didn't mention a word about the seventh palace master tonight, but he directly told you the first palace master's order. So, the key is the operation 20 years later. The first palace master will personally lead the elite troops to explore the Chaos Sea. At this point, he was worried that Qian Zhan would misunderstand, so he added, although my status is low, and I don't quite understand what the Chaos Sea means. But I believe that the first palace master's decision is definitely related to the seventh palace master. Qian Zhan of course knew what the Chaos Sea was about. He suddenly understood and said to himself, I understand now. Just as Big Brother said, the first palace master is willing to promote Dao Xingyan to be the seventh palace master because he wants to make use of him. 20 years later, the first palace master will bring Dao Xingyan and a large group of elite troops to explore the secret in the Chaos Sea. If he can uncover the secret, it will prove that Dao Xingyan is the person that the temple is looking for, and his position will be more stable. If Dao Xingyan can't uncover the secret, he won't have any value, and the first palace master won't appreciate him anymore. Qian Zhan understood why the sixth palace master was so calm, and also knew that 20 years later, it would be the time to decide the seventh palace master's fate. But he was still a little worried, and couldn't help but murmur, if Dao Xingyan isn't the person that the temple is looking for, I have nothing to worry about, and the few palace masters will naturally chase him away. But, what if he is the person that the temple is looking for? Doesn't that mean I'll never have the chance? Ji Tianqing comforted him again, don't worry, Governor. The temple has been looking for him for so many years, but they still can't find him. How can they find him so easily? Moreover, whether the seventh palace master is the person that the temple is looking for, the few palace masters and the seventh palace master himself knows it. Chapter 4691. Originally, Qian Zhan was depressed and confused, as if he was shrouded in fog. However, Ji Tianqing's advice and explanation had helped him to clear the clouds and let him see the light. Yes. I almost forgot about this matter. The fourth palace master did mention it to me before. The seventh palace master said more than once that he was not the person the divine hall was looking for. Qian Zhan was so excited that he could not help but pat the table. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, since the seventh palace master himself admitted that he was not the person the divine hall was looking for, then he definitely was not. Otherwise, he would have already proven it to the divine hall to consolidate and improve his position. The situation is very clear. Governor, you don't have to worry. You only need to wait patiently for 20 years to see the result. Qian Zhan's worries and concerns were finally eliminated. He could not help but smile and cast an admiring look at Ji Tianqing. Yi Jingfeng, you used to be like a taciturn gourd and did not say anything. I did not expect you to be useful at the critical moment. You bastard, with such quick thinking, why didn't you help me analyze the situation and solve my problems earlier? Although Qian Zhan's tone was reproachful, the appreciation in his words was very obvious. Ji Tianqing hurriedly said a few words of modesty and complimented Qian Zhan. This made Qian Zhan even more happy and think highly of this guard. Although he would consult his elder brother Qian Gui in these years. But Qian Gui was his elder brother and would always speak in a lecturing and guiding tone. After all, he was an expert of God Emperor and a dignified Southern Patrol governor. Of course, he had his own dignity and self-esteem. But because of their brotherly relationship, he could not disobey Qian Gui's words or show dissatisfaction with him. Therefore, in the depths of his heart, he hoped that he could nurture some confidants who could help him plan and be his aides. He knew that he could not rely on his elder brother's guidance and teaching for his whole life. He needed to be independent. Cultivating his own confidence was the most important thing. For example, this Yi Jingfeng in front of him was a very good seedling. If he could be nurtured into a capable assistant, he would be able to handle complicated situations on his own in the future. He would also have more face in front of Qian Gui. As the younger brother, he still hoped that one day, his elder brother would praise him and be proud of him. With such thoughts in mind, he found Ji Tianqing more and more pleasing to the eye. He couldn't help but say, "Yi Jingfeng, then help me analyze the second thing that the sixth palace master mentioned." Ji Tianqing already knew the answer in his heart, so he answered without hesitation, "You're the Southern Patrol Commander. You've returned to the Grand Universe Secret Realm to report on your work, so of course you can't stay for long. Now that the outcome has been decided, there is no point for you to stay in the Grand Universe Secret Realm. After all, the fourth Palace Master and the sixth Palace Master have the same attitude. They will not make things difficult for the seventh Palace Master." What he meant was that as the Southern Patrol Governor, no matter how anxious he was, he couldn't deal with the seventh Palace Master. Not only would it be useless, but it would also bring trouble to himself. He could only wait for the fourth Palace Master and the sixth Palace Master to make a move, but they had already decided that the outcome would be revealed in 20 years, so he could only wait patiently for 20 years. Qian Zhan understood what he meant. He frowned and asked, "You mean, I don't need to do anything? I just need to wait for the Lord Palace Master's order to return to the south?" Ji Tianqing nodded. Qian Zhan thought for a moment and nodded slightly, "Okay, then I'll do as you say. I'll wait for the Lord Palace Master's news." After a pause, he continued, "In addition, from tomorrow onwards, I plan to promote you to the position of Changfeng advisor. You will follow me and help me deal with some official matters. When necessary, you will provide me with some suggestions and references. Do you have any questions?" If it was someone who was more modest, they would most likely be overwhelmed by the favor and say that they were not capable enough. They were afraid that they would be ashamed of the governor's cultivation and support. However, Ji Tianqing didn't say this. He confidently and calmly thanked him, saying that he would do his best to help Qian Zhan solve his problems. The so-called advisor was actually an aide with a special status. Although he didn't have any actual military power and his position wasn't high, he was trusted and valued by those in power. In some major decisions, the advisor's opinions and suggestions would often play a greater role. Obviously, Ji Tianqing's performance tonight had won Qian Zhan's favor. After that, Qian Zhan asked Ji Tianqing a few more questions. They were all about some official matters he had on hand. Ji Tianqing answered them one by one. They were all reasonable and organized, winning Qian Zhan's recognition once again. Qian Zhan felt that this person was very reliable. The next morning, Qian Zhan gathered his guards and announced this appointment. Everyone was in an uproar. The 20 guards looked at Ji Tianqing with a different expression. It was obvious that they were envious, jealous, and full of doubt. Everyone couldn't understand. When did this taciturn gourd get so lucky to be valued by the governor? However, although everyone was jealous, they didn't hit him when he was down or question Qian Zhan's decision. These guards had followed Qian Zhan for many years and understood his temper. He had always been straightforward and fiery. Qian Zhan's decision was that whoever dared to question or contradict him would definitely suffer. Moreover, Qian Zhan was strict with his troops. In terms of managing the troops, he was indeed quite bold and capable. Things were just as the sixth palace master said. Half a month later, the first palace master issued an order. It was sent to Qian Zhan's residence by a messenger guard. The content of the order was very simple. When the Southern Patrol Supervisor Qian Zhan dealt with the big case in the south, although he had made mistakes and overlooked some things, he would be forgiven and not punished because of his loyalty. Qian Zhan had already been recuperating in the Great Space Secret Realm for more than a month. It was time to return to the south and return to his post to carry out his appointment. At the end of the order, the first palace master encouraged Qian Zhan with a few words, encouraging him to cultivate diligently and increase his strength as soon as possible. Those few words were both encouragement and reminder. But overall, Qian Zhan still felt the first palace master's care and expectation. He was still willing to believe that the first palace master had not abandoned him. As long as his strength grew to a suitable level, he would still be valued. After receiving the order, Qian Zhan did not stay any longer. On the same day, he led his guards and left the great space secret realm. After leaving the secret realm, he took out the divine warship and had a few guards drive it back to the south. He returned to the secret room to meditate and cultivate, leaving all the affairs to Changfeng counselor Yi Jingfeng. Of course, the power could not only be given to him alone. The captain of the guards also had to cooperate and supervise. In this way, Ji Tianqing could also see a large amount of documents and information while handling all the affairs. He had a deeper understanding of the dozens of branches in the south. The fourth palace master, the sixth palace master, and Qian Zhan reached an agreement. They all decided to wait for 20 years to see the results. But Ji Tianqing did not want to wait that long. He had already made up his mind to start from the south under Qian Zhan's command and force Dao Xingyan to appear as soon as possible. Chapter 4692. The two Hall Masters and Qian Zhan decided to wait for 20 years. In the future, the first Hall Master would personally lead a team to the Chaos Sea to explore the secret of the Door of Heavenly Dao. If he succeeded, Dao Xingyan would sit firmly in the position of the seventh Hall Master and be valued even more. If he did not succeed, Dao Xingyan would not be so important to the Taiyu Shrine. Of course, the first Hall Master would still retain his position and would not expel him from the shrine because of this. However, the fourth Hall Master, the sixth Hall Master, and Qian Zhan's opportunity had arrived. They would definitely think of ways to deal with the seventh Hall Master. If nothing unexpected happened and Ji Tianqing did not appear, things would definitely develop like this. However, Ji Tianqing appeared beside Qian Zhan as Yi Jingfeng and became his confidant. How could he endure for 20 years and wait for an unknown outcome? At that time, if the first Hall Master did not expel Dao Xingyan from the Taiyu Shrine, the fourth and sixth Hall Masters and Qian Zhan would not be able to deal with Dao Xingyan. He would still need to do it personally. Instead of delaying for 20 years and giving Dao Xingyan more time to prepare, he might as well take action as soon as possible. With this thought in mind, Ji Tianqing gradually formed a series of action plans in his mind on the way back to the south. Qian Zhan was the governor patrolling the south. Theoretically speaking, he needed to constantly patrol the 30 or so branches in the south. However, that was not the case in reality. Most of the time, he was in the territory of the Heavenly Dipper Hall, where he had a cave abode. His divine battle dragon palace was located in the 10,000 Dragon Mountain range in the territory of the Heavenly Dipper Hall. It was located on a mountain peak that was tens of thousands of feet high where divine power gathered. This divine palace was magnificent and majestic. It was very solemn. Around the divine palace, there were 12 houses accompanying it. They were like stars surrounding the moon, protecting the divine battle dragon palace. There were as many as 30,000 God King experts stationed in this divine palace. They were all elites under Qian Zhan. In fact, there were 50,000 God King realm soldiers in the Southern Patrol Army under Qian Zhan. 20,000 of them were scattered in dozens of branches, infiltrating various cities, monitoring various officials and collecting countless intelligence. In this way, Hidden Warrior would be able to stay in the Divine War Dragon Palace with 30,000 soldiers. He would be able to know the situation and movements of the south like the back of his hand. Ever since Hidden Battle took office, the 30 or so branches in the south had been relatively peaceful for the past 10,000 years. There were no major wars or disasters, and no major changes. Only some of the branch officials had the problem of forming cliques and monopolizing a region. Just like the big case that Hidden Warfare was ordered to investigate not long ago, it was the same thing. That case involved 2 vice hall masters, dozens of city lords, and the interests of 300 million people. Hidden Warfare did his best to solve the case. Considering the complicated network of relationships in the south, he took a compromise approach and decided on the big case. The result of his ruling could not only punish the criminal, but also serve as a warning to others without causing panic and chaos. However, the Grand Palace Master was dissatisfied with the result of his handling of the matter. He believed that Yang Ming was overcautious in his handling of matters. He was not swift and decisive enough. Originally, according to the Grand Palace Master's intention, that big case should be dealt with swiftly and severely to punish all the criminals. In the Grand Palace Master's words, stubborn illnesses had to be treated with strong medicine. The complicated network of relationships had to be cut with a knife. Even if it caused panic, chaos, and unrest, hidden warfare should have the ability and determination to end it. Hidden Warfare's divine warship flew continuously for 28 days before returning to the Divine War Dragon Palace in the Heavenly Dipper Hall. The Heavenly Dipper Hall was located in the middle of the 30 or so branches in the south. The distance from the Divine War Dragon Palace to any of the branches under Hidden Warfare's jurisdiction was about the same. This was also the reason why Hidden Warfare chose to build his residence in the Heavenly Dipper Hall. At the very least, if he had to go to any of the branch halls to deal with matters, he would be able to rush there in the shortest amount of time. When the divine warship landed on the square outside the Divine War Dragon Palace, there were already thousands of elite black-armored guards waiting in formation. They had received the news of the governor's return in advance and had accurately calculated the time to welcome him an hour in advance. Hidden Warfare had always been strict with his troops. If these soldiers couldn't even handle such a small matter, they would be in trouble. Swoosh! Hidden Warfare was the first to walk out of the divine warship and stand on the square. The thousands of black-armored guards bowed and greeted the governor in unison. Two people followed closely behind Hidden Warfare. One was the captain of the guards, and the other was the newly appointed advisor, Yi Jingfeng. When Hidden Warfare was still in the Great Space Mystic Realm, the news of appointing Yi Jingfeng as an advisor had already spread to the Divine War Dragon Palace and was known by all the generals and commanders. In the past month, the generals, commanders, and captains under Hidden Warfare's command had discussed this name countless times. At this moment, countless people's gazes were gathered on Yi Jingfeng. They looked at this bastard who had hit the jackpot with a complicated expression. Yi Jingfeng's expression was indifferent and calm. He followed Hidden Warfare into the Divine War Palace with the other guards. Hidden Warfare only felt at ease after returning to his home. The domineering and majestic aura of the past reappeared on him. Here, he was the overlord, the master of the entire southern region. A few hours later, everything returned to normal. All the guards returned to their posts. Ji Tianqing also moved into the Divine War Dragon Palace. He had his own room, secret room, study room, and so on. Hidden Warfare lived on the 6th floor of the Divine War Palace and was protected by many guards. Ji Tianqing lived on the 3rd floor, and there were also 4 guards on duty for him. After his status skyrocketed, the power in his hands also increased. Especially after he helped Hidden Warfare with his official duties for half a month, everything was in order. This made Hidden Warfare feel at ease and at ease. Thus, Hidden Warfare gave him more authority. A lot of things were handled by Ji Tianqing. Afterwards, they were handed over to Hidden Warrior for review and approval. Just like this, Ji Tianqing's power increased at a shocking speed. His status also increased. In the entire Divine War Dragon Palace, he became the person who Hidden Warfare valued the most. He was already on equal footing with the generals. Most of the time, he was even responsible for issuing orders on behalf of Hidden Warfare and could command the generals. Although his rapid rise attracted the jealousy of many people, especially the criticism of the generals and commanders, no one dared to question Hidden Warfare's decision. However, no one dared to question Hidden Warfare's decision. Even if someone complained in front of Hidden Warfare or raised objections, it was useless. When those generals and commanders vaguely mentioned Yi Jingfeng, Hidden Warfare pretended not to understand. When those generals and commanders were anxious and said bad things about Yi Jingfeng, hidden warfare would scold and reprimand them. Just like this, after 3 months, Yi Jingfeng's position in the Divine War Dragon Palace became more and more stable. No one dared to go against him openly. Chapter 46-93. After observing for 3 months, he saw that Yi Jingfeng had handled everything in an orderly manner. He also saw that the generals had quieted down and silently accepted Yi Jingfeng's command and dispatch. Only then did he feel relieved. Now that the situation had stabilized, he was no longer worried. He relinquished his authority to Yi Jingfeng, and let him handle the government affairs, with the captain of the guards and a general supervising. Afterward, he entered a secret room to cultivate in seclusion and work hard to improve his strength. He had never forgotten the first palace master's earnest expectations of him and the words he had said to him. Only by constantly improving his strength and reaching the middle level of God Emperor as soon as possible could he be qualified to compete for the position of 7th Hallmaster. In his life, he had never been so eager to improve his strength as he was now. When Qian Zhan began to cultivate in seclusion, Ji Tianqing's opportunity came. He began to gradually gather power, quietly roping in a group of generals and suppressing a group of loyal generals. He used only 3 months to obtain the support of 18 generals through a dozen matters. The other 7 generals who remained neutral, were more loyal, or were against him were gradually stripped of their power by him and slowly marginalized. 5 months later, he had basically gained control of the War Dragon Divine Palace and tens of thousands of soldiers under Qian Zhan's command. He also knew the situation of the 30 or so halls in the south like the back of his hand. Thus, in the 6th month, he used the excuse of handling government affairs to leave the War Dragon Divine Palace and led a large number of soldiers to the Jasper Hall. Spies reported that the deputy hallmaster of the Jasper Hall had colluded with the city lords of a dozen cities to secretly embezzle the temple's resources, intercept the priceless taxes, and fill their own pockets. This kind of case was relatively common and would appear almost every few decades. Originally, Ji Tianqing could have stayed in the War Dragon Divine Palace and issued orders to send a few generals to deal with it. But he found an excuse, saying that he had just taken office and was willing to share the burden of the Southern Patrol Governor. He would rather personally supervise the case. Everyone could understand that he wanted to perform meritorious deeds and perform, so no one said anything. Several days later, Ji Tianqing led 3,000 elite soldiers to the Jasper Hall and began to investigate the deputy hallmaster and the city lords of a dozen cities. The case was complicated, and the connections between the influential officials were very deep. Ji Tianqing had to investigate thoroughly, obtain all the evidence, and investigate the ins and outs of the matter before he could convict the vice hallmaster and the city lords. In the future, when he reported the results to the hall masters, he would be able to explain it clearly. In this way, it would take at least a month or 2, and at most a year or 2. When the case was being investigated and handled in full swing, the nobles and commoners of the Azure Hall were all alarmed and focused their attention on this big case. A few days later, Ji Tianqing found an opportunity to leave Jasper City, where the headquarters of Jasper Hall was located, under the cover of the night. After leaving the Jasper Hall and flying tens of thousands of miles to the south, he summoned the Jyotian 10 Absolutes Pagoda and awakened the Prajna God Emperor who was still cultivating in the distorted spacetime. Shwa! With a flash of divine light, Pan Roa appeared in front of him. The two of them stood in the night sky, their clothes fluttering in the night wind. The Prajna God Emperor surveyed his surroundings and pricked up his eyebrows. He asked, "What do you want me to help you with by calling me out?" Ji Tianqing explained the current situation, as well as his plan, to the Prajna God Emperor. "I've been active in the Grand Universe Mystic Realm for half a year and successfully infiltrated it. I've confirmed that Dao Xingyun is there, and he has become the new 7th Hall Master. The Hall Master thinks highly of him, and he is also very careful. He almost never leaves the Grand Universe Mystic Realm, so I didn't have a chance to take action." The Prajna God Emperor immediately understood his situation and his intentions. He asked, "So, you need me to help you do something to force Dao Xingyan to appear?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "The Hall Master has already made the decision to use 20 years to prepare. 20 years later, he will personally lead the troops to the Chaos Sea. However, I don't want to wait 20 years, so I'm prepared to take action early. Leave this place tonight and rush to the various branch halls. Attack the nobles in those branch halls or the desolate race citizens to create chaos. Every time you take action, you have to leave a mark at the scene." After hearing Ji Tianqing's plan, the Prajna God Emperor nodded with a deadpan expression. He asked, "Do we need to leave those nobles and the desolate race citizens alive?" Ji Tianqing was taken aback for a moment before he revealed an expression of being at a loss whether to laugh or cry. "Prajna, I admit that I have killed numerous powerful enemies and slaughtered numerous living beings along the way, but I'm not a deranged devil. Our goal is Dao Xingyan, not those innocent nobles and the desolate race citizens. You just need to kidnap them and temporarily imprison them. There's no need to kill them." "Oh, I understand." The Prajna God Emperor remained expressionless. His reaction was very indifferent. To an expert at the God Emperor realm like her, the desolate race citizens were no different from the beasts or the sea beasts. They were all ordinary and unfamiliar living beings. Saving them did not give her much of a sense of accomplishment. Slaughtering them did not give her much of a sense of guilt. As long as she could help Ji Tianqing, she did not care about the lives of those living beings. After thinking for a moment, she nodded and said, "All right, then I will imprison the captured desolate race citizens in my sword's world. I will also leave a mark on the scene, making it seem like they were massacred. When you succeed, send me a message and I'll release them." Ji Tianqing nodded and revealed a smile. "All right, let's do that. Thank you for your trouble." The Prajna God Emperor glanced at him and bade him farewell before flying off. In a blink of an eye, her figure disappeared into the night as she rapidly went far away. Ji Tianqing did not waste any time as he hurriedly rushed to a town hundreds of thousands of miles away. It was an important town that was located in the middle of a mountain range. It was equivalent to a checkpoint or gate in the vast mountain range. Countless cultivation resources and heavenly materials and earthly treasures were hidden in the mountains. Treasure hunters and explorers who came from all directions would pass by this important town at the peak of the mountain. This town was not large and maintained a population of 20 to 30,000 people. Half of them were godly monarch realm experts. Furthermore, there were many businesses in the town that dealt in the trade of cultivation resources and materials. This made the town rather prosperous and affluent. Ji Tianqing flew above the town as he enveloped the entire town with his perception. He immediately ascertained the situation. Very good, it was midnight. Everyone was in the town and no one was running around. Ji Tianqing immediately conjured a spell and in a blink of an eye, he produced thousands of divine beams that enveloped the entire town. Swish! 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 Thousands of divine beams formed a barrier that spanned dozens of miles, enveloping the entire town. In a blink of an eye, the entire town was sealed. The dazzling light of the sealing formation illuminated the gloomy little town, making every detail of it visible. Many people were jolted awake as they subconsciously rushed out of their houses and courtyards to see what was happening. Chapter 46-94. Although there were more than 20,000 people in the town, and half of them were godly king realm experts, none of them were prepared. However, everyone was caught off guard and had no idea what they were about to face. Many of them had just rushed out of their houses and courtyards when they saw the entire town being covered by a large array. Then, a huge golden palm descended from the sky, capturing and wrapping them up. It was so strong that it was suffocating. It was an irresistible force that bound them tightly. They could not move, nor could they shout for help. They were stuffed into an unfamiliar space. Swish! It was the fourth level of the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda. When the Divine Pagoda was upgraded to an Emperor-level Divine Artifact, Ji Tianqing had modified the internal space of the Divine Pagoda. At this moment, the fourth-level space was like a small world filled with beauty. It had magnificent mountains, blue skies, and white clouds. Those desolate race commoners, who had been captured and thrown into this small world, were filled with fear. They looked around warily. When they saw their surroundings and confirmed that there was no immediate danger to their lives, they heaved a sigh of relief. Following that, they began to explore their surroundings, searching for friends and family. At the same time, the entire town fell into chaos. Countless desolate race commoners rushed out of their houses and alleys. There were even many godly king realm experts who realized that an expert was attacking the town. They joined forces to cast spells to launch a counterattack. However, it was all futile. The divine techniques cast by the godly king realm experts were unable to break through the sealing array. Instead, it was their desperate counterattack that made them Ji Tianqing's primary targets. Soon, they were captured by the huge golden palm that descended from the sky, and brought to the fourth level of the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda. Batch after batch of desolate race commoners were captured by Ji Tianqing and imprisoned in the Divine Pagoda. Those godly king realm experts still had a chance to resist. They still wanted to break through the sealing array and escape. As for those divine lord realm commoners, they did not even have a chance to resist before they were captured by the huge golden palm. In just 15 minutes, more than 23,000 desolate race commoners had been captured by Ji Tianqing. There were about 1,000 desolate race citizens left. They were either hiding in secret chambers in some of the buildings or deep underground. The previously prosperous town had now become a mess. Nearly half of the houses and buildings had collapsed and turned into ruins. It was even to the extent that a few dozen bonfires had been ignited in the middle of the dense and dilapidated walls, causing flames to soar into the sky and thick smoke to rise into the sky. Other than the fact that there were no bloodstains or corpses in the ruins, the entire town looked like it had been massacred. As for the 1,000-plus desolate race citizens that were hiding underground, 80% of them had been found by Ji Tianqing and locked up in the fourth level of the Divine Pagoda. Only 300 desolate race members luckily escaped the calamity. They hid deep underground and trembled for an hour. Only when they heard that there was no more commotion outside did they dare to reveal themselves. At this time, the sealing formation that enveloped the entire town had long since disappeared. The unknown powerful enemy and the giant golden palm that descended from the sky had also disappeared without a trace, as if they had never appeared. The 300 desolate race citizens, who had narrowly escaped death, carefully crawled out of the ruins. They sorrowfully surveyed their surroundings in search of other survivors. The result was without a doubt. They did not find any other survivors. All they saw was a devastated town that had turned into ruins. It had been reduced to ashes amidst the flames and thick smoke. Other than that, these survivors discovered a special mark on the periphery of the ruins. It was outside the town's city walls. On the bluestone paved road, there was a circular mark that was about 100 feet in radius. The mark looked like a gigantic sun, and there were a few stars and a cloud engraved on it. This simple pattern did not have any text in it, so the surviving desolate race citizens could not tell what it was. In their shock, they could only take out their transmission jade slips and quickly report the news to the city lord. There were still some survivors who did not dare to stay near the ruins. They fled the town overnight and rushed to a distant city. Ji Tianqing returned to the Green Jade Hall's headquarters and silently entered Green Jade City. Before daybreak, he returned to his residence and entered a chamber to meditate. An hour later, daybreak arrived. As usual, he got up and walked out of the chamber. With the help of the maidservants, he washed up and entered the study to handle official business. No one noticed anything unusual. Everyone thought that he had meditated in the chamber for the entire night as usual. He did not even step out of his room. The development of the matter was as he expected. An hour later, the guard captain, who was in charge of communication, walked into the study with a solemn expression, holding a communication jade slip in his hand. "Lord Advisor, there is a very important matter to report to you. Just last night, a shocking incident happened in one of the important towns under Black Mountain City's jurisdiction." The guard captain did not waste any time, nor did he dare speak any nonsense. He gave a concise summary of the matter and handed the transmission jade slip to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing also revealed a shocked expression. He hurriedly took the jade slip and checked its contents. The message was from the Black Mountain City governor. He angrily described what had happened in that town. After Ji Tianqing read the message, he also revealed an appropriate expression of shock. He slammed the table and shouted angrily, "Damn it! This is too despicable. How many years has it been? Thousands of years? Tens of thousands of years? Such a horrifying thing had never happened before. More than 20,000 people in the town were slaughtered by an unknown powerhouse. I will definitely investigate this matter and give the people of Black Mountain City an explanation." After he finished speaking, Ji Tianqing put away the transmission jade slip and immediately gave the order to gather the Green Jade Hall Master, several generals, and 2,000 elite soldiers. In less than 15 minutes, 4 generals and 2,000 soldiers, as well as the Green Jade Hall Master and 3,000 guards, all gathered in the square. Ji Tianqing led the 5,000 soldiers and boarded 5 divine warships. They rushed to Black Mountain City at the fastest speed, the small town in the mountains. Half a day later, the fleet arrived at the small town. Although they were still far away, everyone could clearly see that the once prosperous town had become a pile of ruins. Many buildings in the small town were still burning, and black smoke was rising in spirals. Ji Tianqing, the Green Jade Hall Master, and the generals were the first to walk out of the divine warship. They stood in the sky above the small town and looked down at the situation. The 5,000 soldiers spread out and surrounded the small town. Then, they searched for survivors in the ruins and looked for clues. Everything was carried out in an orderly manner. Everyone's faces and eyes were filled with indignation. In the end, they did not find any survivors, nor did they find any useful clues. Only the mark on the bluestone road outside the half-collapsed city wall attracted the attention of Ji Tianqing and the others. Ji Tianqing studied the strange mark for a while, but he did not have any clues. He sent someone to copy the mark and bring it back for investigation. Chapter 4695. While Ji Tianqing and the others were investigating the situation, the Black Mountain City Lord had also arrived with a group of city guards. Before Ji Tianqing could say anything, the Jasper Hall Master had already scolded the Black Mountain City Lord. She was scolding him for not doing his job well and not supervising properly. How could he allow such a shocking incident to happen in his territory? Furthermore, after the incident, as the Black Mountain City Lord, he did not rush over immediately to protect the scene. Instead, he arrived late. What a bastard! The Black Mountain City Lord felt wronged. He could not believe that such a thing would happen in his territory. In the past 10,000 years, he had never even heard of such a thing. No matter how diligent he was in his work and how much he cared about the safety of the citizens, how could he monitor this small town? Furthermore, the unknown expert who attacked the small town was at least a peak god king. How could the city guards he sent out monitor the situation? However, no matter how wrong the Black Mountain City Lord felt, he could only swallow his grievances and plead for mercy to the Jasper Hall Master. Ji Tianqing did not make things difficult for him. After reprimanding him, he ordered him to monitor the situation in his territory strictly. Once he discovered an unknown expert, he was to report it immediately. The Jasper Hall Master did not manage to escape and was reprimanded by Ji Tianqing. After that, Ji Tianqing requested the Jasper Hall to send out elite soldiers to search for traces and clues of the culprit in his territory. There was no clue to the entire incident. Ji Tianqing did not have any problems handling it this way. The Jasper Hall Master and the Black Mountain City Lord acknowledged the order and left with their subordinates. Ji Tianqing did not stay any longer. After using the image recording crystal to record the ruins of the small town, he returned to Jasper City with his soldiers. After returning to Jasper City, Ji Tianqing entered the study to deal with this matter. He pretended to investigate the clues of the mysterious mark. The captain of the guards and the 4 generals entered the study worriedly and spoke to him. "Advisor, shouldn't we report to the governor about such a major incident?" "Yes. This incident happened in the governor's territory. We have to inform him as soon as possible so that we can discuss a countermeasure. According to this subordinate's estimation, that damned murderer is at least a peak divine king, and very possibly a god-emperor level expert. I'm afraid only the governor can make progress in this matter." The guard captain and the general's worries were not without reason, but how could Ji Tianqing let them have their way? "Shut up!" Ji Tianqing slammed the table and glared at a certain general. He scolded, "God Emperor. What do you think the God Emperor is? Wild vegetables and fruits. Could it be seen everywhere? Stop spouting nonsense and creating panic. Otherwise, I'll punish you first." The general who was being scolded was so scared that he shrunk his neck and quickly lowered his head, not daring to speak carelessly. Ji Tianqing then said to the others, "You're right. With such a big thing happening, we should indeed report it to the governor. But have you ever thought about it? The governor was cultivating in seclusion and might be at the critical juncture of increasing his strength. And what are we doing? Encountering such a big thing, we didn't even find any clues. We don't even know who the murderer is or what he looks like. What are you reporting to the governor? Interrupting his seclusion just to tell him that something big happened? Where are your brains? Do you want to be scolded? Be punished? No wonder all these years, you've been by the governor's side, but you've never been trusted or valued by him. With your way of doing things, you don't want to solve the problem, you don't want to solve the problem for the governor, you only want to push the thorny problem out. The governor is already very merciful that he didn't ask you to scram." This series of words made everyone dizzy on the spot. Even if everyone was somewhat unconvinced in their hearts, they were still ashamed and lowered their heads in shame. There was no other way. Ji Tianqing was right. They had followed Qian Zhan for so many years and had always done things like this. Therefore, they had never been trusted or valued by Qian Zhan. And this Chang Feng advisor in front of them was just a nameless guard a few months ago. He had no status, and no power. Yet, he was able to be valued by Qian Zhan and became an advisor, becoming Qian Zhan's aide and confidant. As for the reason why he was able to soar to the top in one step, he had also explained it clearly just now. It was very simple. When encountering a problem, please think of a way to solve it first and solve the problem for the governor, instead of stuffing it all to the governor. While everyone felt ashamed, they also expressed that they had learned something. After a moment of silence, no one mentioned reporting to Qian Zhan anymore. They all asked Ji Tianqing for advice. "Counselor, do you mean, we shouldn't report this matter to the governor first? Let's investigate this matter thoroughly before informing the governor." "Advisor, that's what I mean. If we don't investigate it thoroughly, what are we going to report to the governor? At the very least, we have to find out who the murderer is, right? Advisor, then where do you think we should start from? How do you think we can find the real murderer in the shortest time possible? Advisor, you have a card up your sleeve. You must have a plan long ago. We only need to act according to your orders." The captain of the guards and the generals discussed for a while. Ji Tianqing raised his hand. Everyone immediately quietened down. Their gazes gathered on him. The murderer's strength is very strong. There is no doubt about this. That small town had over 20,000 people. Moreover, most of them were divine king experts. For the mysterious expert to be able to destroy the entire small town and abduct so many people in such a short time, it can be seen how powerful his strength and methods are. Hearing until here, several generals all noticed a detail and frowned one after another. Abducted? Advisor, how can you be sure that the townspeople were abducted and not massacred? That's right. Advisor, what evidence do you have to prove that those townspeople were only abducted? Ji Tianqing glanced at them and reprimanded, we have all carefully inspected that small town. Did you see many corpses in the ruins? Not to mention corpses, you didn't even see any blood, bones, or body parts, right? Since we didn't see any corpses or blood, how can we say that those townspeople were massacred? However, those townspeople are indeed missing. Therefore, they must have been abducted. After Ji Tianqing's explanation, the guard captain and several generals gradually accepted this conclusion. Then, Ji Tianqing continued, the Taiyu Shrine has been peaceful for tens of thousands of years. Almost nothing as shocking as this has ever happened. What motive did the mysterious expert have to do this to the townspeople? Did the townspeople have some grudge with him? Or did the mysterious expert do this to take revenge on the Jasper Hall? Ji Tianqing pretended to analyze the situation. The captain of the guards and the generals were also led astray by him. Chapter 46-96. Fortunately, there were still two generals who remained calm and clear-headed. After Ji Tianqing analyzed a lot, they took the initiative to mention the mysterious mark. Advisor, what's with the mark that was left outside the town's walls? That's right. Counselor, we can check from the hand imprint. Ji Tianqing finally showed a gratified smile and nodded. You two have hit the nail on the head. I have already asked a few survivors, and they all clearly said that before the incident, there was no mysterious mark outside the town's walls. This proves that the mysterious mark was purposely left behind by the murderer. Let's not care about the murderer's motive for leaving the mark. We have to figure out what the mark means first. The captain of the guards and the generals quickly nodded in agreement. Ji Tianqing continued, the case that we were working on and investigating has reached a critical point, so we cannot put it aside. Leave half of the manpower to continue investigating the case. The other half will be personally commanded by me to deal with this case of collective disappearance. I will now announce the personnel transfer. If there are any objections, please keep them to yourself. After that, Ji Tianqing divided the soldiers under his command into two groups. One group would continue investigating the case of Deputy Hall Master Jasper, while the other group would follow him to investigate the matter of the town. Ji Tianqing had given a very strict gag order, and even warned the leaders of Jasper Hall and Black Mountain City. Unfortunately, what happened in the small town was too sudden and too shocking. The news eventually leaked out a day later, and some of the nobles in Jasper Hall found out about it. And those nobles who wished for the world to be in chaos spread the news everywhere, so that the powerhouses of the other halls quickly found out about it. Therefore, for a long time, the nobles and powerhouses of more than 30 halls in the south were discussing this bizarre incident. Ji Tianqing was busy for 3 whole days. Everyone saw with their own eyes that he did not sleep for 3 days and 3 nights to investigate the case of the collective disappearance of the town's citizens. Unfortunately, there was no progress. The only clue was that mysterious mark. Even though Ji Tianqing had flipped through thousands of history books, he still could not find the corresponding record. It seemed that this case was going to become an unsolved case without any clues. At this moment, the captain of the guards rushed into the study with a solemn expression and delivered a piece of bad news to Ji Tianqing. Advisor, bad news, something happened again. The captain of the guards ran all the way into the study and slapped a communication jade slip on the table in front of Ji Tianqing. Something happened in a small town in Yushan Hall. The situation is almost the same. Tens of thousands of citizens all disappeared overnight. Ji Tianqing, who was dealing with official business, was stunned. Of course, he knew that it was the masterpiece of the Prajna God Emperor. However, he was still a little worried that Pan Ruo God Emperor would leave behind some traces and information that could be used against him. What? Something happened to Yushan Tang, and the situation is almost the same. Ji Tianqing's face was filled with shock, and his eyes were burning with rage. With a low growl, he hurriedly picked up the communication jade slip and read its contents. This communication jade slip was sent by the Yushan Hall's hall master. It reported in detail the time and location of the incident, as well as the results of their investigation. The incident happened last night. It was a remote small town. There were about 100,000 citizens living there, and the city's defense was rather weak. The citizens in the city were caught off guard, and they were enveloped by a sealing array that suddenly appeared. In a short hour, nearly 50,000 desolate race citizens were captured by a mysterious expert. The 50,000 desolate race citizens who were lucky enough to survive were still in a state of shock. They tried their best to resist. Unfortunately, they did not manage to see the murderer's face, nor did they manage to break the sealing array. They could only see the sky filled with divine technique shadows, as well as a gigantic palm that blotted out the sky. They could also hear the incessant screams and cries of horror and despair. An hour later, everything calmed down. The sealing array also automatically disappeared. The mysterious murderer did not show his face from beginning to end. However, close to 50,000 civilians had disappeared without a trace, and half of the city had turned into ruins. It was a complete mess, and it was a tragic sight. What was even stranger was that the Yushan Hall master received the news at dawn. He quickly led his troops to investigate. After a careful inspection of the scene, the Yushan Hall master only found a small amount of blood. He did not see any corpses or remains. Outside the devastated city, there was a mysterious mark left under the city gate that was paved with stone slabs. And that mark was circular. In the middle, there was a picture of stars and clouds. It was exactly the same as the one they found in the small town. Damn it! That mysterious murderer had left the Jasper Hall so quickly and sneaked into the mountain hall. This is definitely a premeditated attack. After Ji Tianqing finished reading the jade slip, he slammed the table angrily. His body emitted intense killing intent. The guard captain could no longer be bothered with his anger. With a long face, he said anxiously, "Lord Advisor, now is not the time to discuss this matter. This is already the second major case in 4 days." Using the same method, more than 70,000 people have disappeared. This time, no matter what you say, we have to report to the governor. This matter has blown up and we can't handle it anymore. It's better to let the governor report to the temple. These few days, the guard captain had also been investigating the disappearance of the small town citizens. He had no clue. He was so anxious that his confidence was about to collapse. Now that the same thing had happened to Yushan Hall and the number of citizens who had been abducted was even greater, he could not take it anymore. Ji Tianqing still wanted to say a few more words of persuasion to push this matter back a little. He had originally planned to wait for the Prajna God Emperor to make a move and kidnap a group of citizens before reporting to the Hidden Warfare Department. He did not expect the guard captain to be so anxious. He could not even bear this little pressure. Not long after the news spread, several generals rushed into the study and jointly requested Ji Tianqing to report to the Hidden Warfare Department. At this juncture, if Ji Tianqing still forcefully suppressed the news and did not report to the Hidden Warfare Department, the guards and generals would not listen. The captain of the guards and the generals would not listen to him. They would definitely knock on his door and forcefully awaken him. Instead of developing to that point, Ji Tianqing could only take the guard captain and generals to awaken the Hidden Warfare Department. Unfortunately, the Hidden Warfare Department was still in seclusion in the secret room. He was thinking about how to increase his strength and condense his second Tao. Suddenly being knocked on, he was shocked. He could only extinguish the trace of comprehension that he had accumulated with great difficulty and forcefully end his seclusion. After opening the door of the secret room, he looked at everyone with a dark face and asked in a deep voice, "What happened? Did the sky fall? You all actually came together to knock on the door." Chapter 46-97. Although Qian Zhan was angry, he also understood that if it wasn't something serious, everyone wouldn't have come together. After leaving the secret room, Qian Zhan led everyone to the study room and asked about the situation. Ji Tianqing, as the advisor, was in charge of reporting the situation and told Qian Zhan about the two incidents. The guard captain and the generals didn't stay idle either. Of course, they had to make their presence known and added some details. Qian Zhan was shocked. He stopped and looked at everyone with an expression of disbelief. What? Something like this actually happened? He didn't dare to believe his ears and couldn't accept this fact. More than 20,000 people in a town went missing and the town was destroyed into ruins. A few days later, another 50,000 civilians in another city were also abducted by the mysterious expert. Qian Zhan had never seen or heard of such a thing before. What he really couldn't accept was that these two incidents happened in his territory. For a moment, Qian Zhan's mind went blank and he lost the ability to think. But he quickly calmed down after being absent-minded for a moment. After entering the study room, he didn't sit down. He stood behind the desk and asked everyone with a serious expression and a dignified gaze. In just a few days, that mysterious expert went to 2 different halls and committed such a serious crime. Did you find any clues? Ji Tianqing and the generals all looked regretful and ashamed. They shook their heads to show that they didn't have any clues. From the beginning to the end, no one has seen that mysterious expert. We don't know what he looks like. According to the survivors, when the incident happened, they could only see the sky full of divine light and a huge palm. That mysterious expert is very strong. He kidnapped tens of thousands of people in a short period of time and never showed himself. We carefully checked the scene and only found one clue. It was a mysterious mark that was deliberately left behind by the mysterious expert. We read many scrolls and books, but we still couldn't find out what that mark meant. After saying that, Ji Tianqing took out a dark golden brocade with the circular mark drawn on it. Qian Zhan took the brocade and looked at it carefully for a long time, but he couldn't find any clues. He slumped back into his chair and rubbed the space between his eyebrows in pain as he tried to think of a solution. But after holding it in for a long time, he still couldn't think of an effective solution. He could only grumble, "Why didn't you report to me earlier when such a big thing happened?" The generals secretly glanced at Ji Tianqing. Although they didn't say anything, they were complaining in their hearts. Of course, Ji Tianqing couldn't let them complain behind his back, so he took the initiative to explain, "Your subordinate is in charge of this matter. Half of my men are currently investigating. This subordinate didn't want to disturb your cultivation and wait for us to find some clues before reporting back to you. But who would have thought that before we could find any clues, that mysterious expert would strike again?" The guard captain and several generals stared at Hidden Warrior to see how he would react. Everyone thought that Yi Jingfeng's delay would definitely anger the governor and he would be punished. After this fellow's meteoric rise, he was highly regarded by the governor. It was time for him to suffer a setback and lose some of his prestige. But what they didn't expect was that Hidden Warrior didn't get angry. Instead, he nodded in agreement and said, "Very good. Yi Jingfeng, as my advisor, you are also my right-hand man. Even if your ability is limited and you can't find any clues or results, you have such an idea. This proves that I didn't misjudge you. Next, not only can you not relax, but you also have to work harder to find the results as soon as possible." "Yes, sir." Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and glanced at the generals. Everyone was helpless and could only smile awkwardly. "All right, all of you can leave. I will think of a way to deal with this matter. Hidden Warrior waved his hand and let everyone leave the study. In reality, he was also at his wits' end regarding these two matters, and his hands were tied. The so-called deal could only be to report the relevant information and situation to the second palace master of the Taiyu Mystery Land. After all, the second palace master had always been in charge of the affairs of the temple. Only important matters would be handled by the first palace master himself. After the second palace master received Hidden Warrior's message, he was also shocked and in disbelief. The Taiyu shrine had been peaceful for tens of thousands of years. Tens of thousands of people being kidnapped and disappearing at the same time had not happened for more than 10,000 years. The second palace master couldn't think of any expert who would be so bold as to do such a thing in the territory of the Taiyu shrine. According to Hidden Warrior's description, the second palace master speculated that the murderer was at least a peak divine king, and most likely a god-emperor expert. An emperor-god powerhouse committing crimes within the deity's hall's territory was simply too terrifying. Not to mention the guards of the various temples and cities, even the South Patrol commander found it difficult to find the mysterious expert, let alone capture him. More importantly, the god-emperor expert was good at hiding. He did things flawlessly and didn't leave any clues behind. Not only was the South Patrol commander unable to investigate, but even the palace master Lien Er found it difficult to find the murderer. In the end, the second palace master's attention was attracted by the mysterious mark. He vaguely felt that he had seen the mark somewhere before, but he couldn't remember where. The second palace master simply put the mysterious mark aside. After a moment of consideration, he took out the communication jade slip and replied to Hidden Warrior. I have received the letter. I have learned of the two tragedies in the southern region and will pass on the message to the palace masters. Order the South Patrol commander Hidden Warrior to personally lead the troops to patrol the various temples to prevent the murderer from committing crimes again. Order all the temples to be on high alert and defend with all their might. I will send 2 to 3 palace masters to lead the Divine Guard Legion to the southern region. If there are any new orders or changes, I will contact you again. After sending the message, the second palace master summoned the messenger guards and asked them to inform the 4th palace master, the 5th palace master, and the 6th palace master. In the second palace master's opinion, it was almost impossible for Hidden Warrior to find the mysterious expert and capture the murderer. In order to save the tens of thousands of people who were kidnapped and to prevent the murderer from continuing to cause trouble, he had to send the palace masters to solve the problem. Not long after, the 3 palace masters received the order and rushed to the second palace master's study to meet him. The second palace master didn't waste time and straightforwardly explained what had happened in the southern region. After hearing the story, the 3 palace masters were shocked and couldn't believe it. They were boiling with anger. Outrageous! Which bastard dares to behave atrociously in my territory? This hasn't happened for more than 10,000 years. I want to see who is the fool. Is he tired of living? My territory is vast and there are many people. If the murderer continues to commit crimes, not only will it be difficult to catch him, but it will also cause panic among the people. This matter should be dealt with sooner rather than later. We have to kill him as soon as possible. Chapter 46-98. The temple masters knew that if they did not catch the culprit early, it would cause great harm. As the temple masters of the Divine Hall, they enjoyed lofty status and treatment. They had unimaginable power. However, when faced with such a difficult problem, they should step forward bravely to eliminate the danger and crisis for the Divine Hall. In addition, the Divine Hall had been very peaceful for more than 10,000 years. The temple masters' strength had improved, but they had never had the chance to fight. Many times, they were too bored and wanted to fight with others to test their strength and cultivation results. They could only spar with each other. Now that they had encountered such a situation, they would not hesitate or retreat. They were very active and enthusiastic, taking the initiative to ask the second temple master to fight. The second temple master nodded and agreed to the request of the three temple masters. He said, I am very pleased that you are willing to fight for the divine hall. Since there are no objections, the three temple masters should set off as soon as possible. Each of you will lead 3,000 elites to the southern region. Try to split up and search for the mysterious culprit. The three temple masters said yes in unison. After bowing to the second temple master, they left. An hour later, the three temple masters gathered 3,000 divine guards. After finishing their preparations, they left the Taiyu mystery realm on the divine ship. The second temple master hesitated for a long time. In the end, he took the communication jade slip from Qian Zhan and went to find the first temple master. Although he believed that the three temple masters he sent out were capable of capturing or killing the mysterious culprit. After serious consideration, he decided to report this matter to the first temple master. This was because he vaguely remembered the origin of the mysterious mark, but he could not confirm it. Whether or not he could confirm the origin of the mark, this matter involved too much. He could only let the first temple master handle it personally. In the dead of night. Inside and outside the Taiyu Divine Palace, it was brightly lit and brilliant. The second temple master entered the Taiyu Divine Palace with a solemn expression, surrounded by several guards. After passing through many corridors and courtyards, he saw the first temple master meditating in a secret room. The first temple master did not wear luxurious clothes. He only wore a simple and plain black robe. He sat cross-legged on an altar in the secret room that was surrounded by divine power. He had spent a large amount of emperor-level refining materials to create the altar. It was an emperor-level treasure that was extremely beneficial to the cultivation of experts. The first palace master sat at the top of the altar and looked down at the second palace master who had entered the secret chamber. He asked in a deep voice, "What is it that you can't make up your mind and came to find me?" When he asked this question, he was already mentally prepared and guessed that something big was going to happen. Moreover, this matter was very likely related to the hidden battle. As expected. Second Lord bowed and said, "Something has happened in the southern region where the hidden battlecruisers were patrolling. A mysterious expert destroyed the town and abducted tens of thousands of people in a few days." The first palace master furrowed his brows as a sharp glint flashed across his eyes. Somewhat surprised, he asked in a deep voice, "There's actually such a thing?" The second palace master nodded and quickly passed the communication jade strip that Qian Zhan sent to the first palace master. The first palace master took the jade scroll. After checking the contents, he was shocked. His eyes were filled with anger. "Damn bastard, how dare he commit crimes in my territory? I will make him suffer a fate worse than death." The second palace master nodded in agreement and reported, "First palace master, I have already given the order to send the fourth palace master, the fifth palace master, and the sixth palace master to search for the culprit in the southern region." The first palace master raised his eyebrows and asked, "You handled it very well and in a timely manner. However, I'm afraid that you came to find me for more than just this, right?" The second palace master nodded again and took out a piece of golden paper and handed it to the first palace master. "Look at this pattern. They found it at the scene. It should be a mark left by the culprit." The first palace master understood that many experts would leave some marks or special marks at the scene after they killed someone or set fire to it. Some of them did it to show their identity and their ferocity. Some did it to commemorate or to announce something to the world. No matter what the culprit's purpose was, as long as there was a mark, there would be a trace. The first palace master reached out to take the golden paper. His eyes were immediately attracted by the circular pattern and he could not look away. He looked at it silently for a long time before he put away the golden paper. He looked at the second palace master with a grave expression and asked, "Are you sure that they found this mark at the scene?" "Absolutely." The second palace master nodded. The first palace master nodded slightly and put away the golden paper. He waved his hand and said, "I know. If there's nothing else, you can leave. However, the second palace master refused to bow and leave. He asked, "First palace master, you have seen this mark and know its origin, right?" He had already made the decision to send the 3 palace masters to search for the culprit, but he still reported to the first palace master to verify his guess. Now, the first palace master's reaction seemed to confirm his guess. The first palace master glanced at him and said expressionlessly, "I know what you are thinking, but I can tell you clearly that it is not what you think." But the second palace master still wanted to ask more to confirm the origin of the mark. However, the first palace master raised his hand and interrupted him. He said in a low voice, "The mark is not important at all. Your goal is to catch the culprit or kill him. Go. If necessary, you can go to the southern region personally." The second palace master understood that the first palace master wanted to keep the secret and not allow others to criticize and make wild guesses. He could not disobey the first palace master's order. He could only bow and leave the secret room. Another 4 days passed. Qian Zhan received news that in a nearby branch, tens of thousands of people in a city had been kidnapped by a mysterious powerhouse. More than half of the city had been destroyed and turned into a mess of ruins. The situation was the same as before. The survivors did not see the culprit, so they did not know what the culprit looked like or how many there were. After it was over, the survivors saw a mysterious mark on the stone floor under the city wall. The same story played out. Qian Zhan was furious, but he felt helpless. He could only send a communication jade slip to report this matter to the second palace master, the fourth palace master, the fifth palace master, and the sixth palace master. After all, the second palace master had already sent a message to tell him that the 3 palace masters were rushing to the south and would help him soon. After sending the message, Qian Zhan continued to wait for orders. Another 9 days passed. Another branch also sent news that in a town under the jurisdiction of this branch, more than 30,000 people had disappeared overnight. No one was spared. The entire town had been turned into ruins. It was very tragic. When Qian Zhan received the news, he was already numb. He just passed the news step by step and reported it to the palace masters. The next day, the 4th palace master, the 5th palace master, and the 6th palace master arrived in the southern region one after another and stationed themselves in the 3 branches. They did not meet with Qian Zhan. Instead, they followed the route of the mysterious culprit and surrounded him. Chapter 46-99. Many of the southern region's branches were in trouble. The news of the cities being destroyed and the disappearance of tens of thousands of citizens had already spread to the various branches in the south. Immediately, countless citizens began to discuss and they were filled with fear and worry. No one knew if the mysterious expert's demonic claws would extend towards them next. The ordinary citizens were helpless. They did not know how to defend themselves, nor did they have the ability to resist the mysterious expert's invasion. The guards and nobles of the various cities were also helpless. They could only pray that they would not become the mysterious expert's next target. Even the hall masters of the various branches were having headaches, but they were also feeling helpless. On the other side, in order to calm the citizens and prevent panic from spreading, Qian Zhan hurriedly informed the various branches that the 3 hall masters had arrived and were pursuing the murderer with all their might. With the 3 hall masters' strength and means, it would not take long for them to capture the murderer. This action was indeed effective. After the citizens received the news, they calmed down a lot. Everyone hoped that the 3 hall masters would capture the murderer as soon as possible. But there was a drawback to doing so. Once the news of the 3 hall masters being mobilized and searching for the murderer spread, the murderer would naturally know. In the following half a month, the mysterious expert indeed became more cautious and cunning. Although the 3 hall masters had roughly determined the murderer's location based on the previous missing cases, they had begun to surround and capture the murderer. However, the murderer had very cunningly avoided them and silently escaped the encirclement. After 8 days of silence, the murderer appeared in a remote branch. Once again, she destroyed half of the city and abducted tens of thousands of citizens. When the news reached the ears of the 3 hall masters, they realized that the murderer had long escaped. Helpless, they could only change their direction and rush to the scene of the incident to continue their search for the murderer. The outcome was not surprising. When they arrived at the scene of the incident and began their search in that branch, the murderer had silently escaped far away. The 3 hall masters and the murderer began their pursuit in the territories of dozens of branches in the south. The murderer could be said to be elusive and difficult to track down. She was very cunning. In the past 2 months, she had gone to more than 30 branches and created 15 missing cases. She had abducted more than 800,000 desolate race citizens. Her whereabouts were erratic. Sometimes she was in the east, sometimes she was in the west. It was unfathomable. The 3 palace masters were completely led by the nose by her. They were always one step behind her and were chasing after her from behind. They were in a very sorry state. She was meticulous in her work. Every time she created a missing person case, she did not leave any clues or traces. No matter who went to investigate the scene, they could only see the mysterious mark and could not find any other clues. The 3 palace masters had been searching for the culprit for 2 months, but they didn't even know if the culprit was a man or a woman, or what race they were from. In the beginning, the people in the various branches were still full of hope, hoping that the 3 palace masters would be able to catch the murderer as soon as possible. However, 2 months had passed, and the 3 palace masters had been running all over the place. They were exhausted, but they could not even see the shadow of the murderer. The panic of the commoners became even more serious. Rumors started to spread among the commoners, and all sorts of rumors emerged. More than 30 branches in the south had become chaotic. Even if hidden warfare tried to pacify and suppress them, it was useless. The faces of the 3 palace masters turned gloomy, and they were furious. They vented their anger on Qian Zhan, thinking that he was the one who revealed everyone's whereabouts, which led to them being played by the murderer. Of course, Qian Zhan would not admit to such a crime. He cried out that he was wronged, and repeatedly emphasized that the murderer was too cunning. The 3 palace masters could not really blame Qian Zhan, nor were they willing to ask the 2nd palace master for help. They could only continue to search for the murderer. They flew day and night across the territories of the various branches in the south. The matter became more and more serious, and the situation became more and more serious. The arrogant actions of the mysterious expert were unstoppable. The commoners were terrified, and the palace masters of more than 30 branches could not sit still. The 3 palace masters and Qian Zhan were humiliated. The commoners talked about them in private, thinking that they were incompetent. The 2nd palace master was far away in the Taiyu mystery realm. He commanded and kept an eye on the movements in the south. He had thought that the situation would be under control soon, and the 3 palace masters would be able to catch the murderer soon. However, he did not expect that the situation would develop to such an extent and worsen to such an extent. He could not delay any longer and allow the situation to escalate. The 2nd palace master finally made up his mind. Late that night, he rushed to the Taiyu Divine Palace again to meet with the 1st palace master. In the secret chamber in the depths of the Divine Palace, the 1st palace master sat on the altar surrounded by divine power. He looked down at the 2nd palace master, who pushed the door open and entered, and frowned. He did not need to ask. He could guess from the 2nd palace master's solemn expression that something was wrong. What? That matter has not been dealt with? The 2nd palace master walked to the altar and stood still. He bowed to the 1st palace master and explained in a heavy tone, reporting to the 1st palace master, the 4th palace master, the 5th palace master, and the 6th palace master have been searching for the murderer in the southern region for 2 months, but they have not been able to catch the murderer. We can basically confirm that the murderer is at the God-Emperor realm and is very cunning and treacherous. The three palace masters not only failed to catch the murderer, but also could not find out what the murderer looks like. In the past 2 months, the murderer has committed 15 crimes in a row and kidnapped more than 800,000 commoners. During this period, the second palace master had been in charge of the matter and had not reported to the first palace master. The first palace master had been cultivating in seclusion and did not ask about the matter. He thought that the second palace master had already dealt with it. Now that he heard the second palace master's report, the first palace master was shocked and could not believe it. What? It's been 2 months and they still haven't caught the murderer. They haven't even found out who the murderer is. The first palace master's face was gloomy and he asked in a harsh tone, "What are you doing? How can you delay for so long and let the matter develop to such a stage?" The second palace master quickly bowed and asked for forgiveness from the first palace master. He said that he had not handled the matter well and asked the first palace master to punish him. However, he came to the first palace master tonight not to ask for forgiveness, but to talk about that matter. After beating around the bush, he finally stated the purpose of his visit and got to the point. First Palace Master, although we have not found out which God Emperor powerhouse is kidnapping our people and destroying the peace in the south, we still have not found out. However, every time the murderer commits a crime, he will leave a mark at the scene. That's right, it's the imprint that I showed you before. The murderer's goal is very obvious. He wants to find the owner of the mark. I believe that you already have the answer in your heart and know what that mark means. After saying that, the second palace master looked up at the first palace master and waited for him to give an answer or to express his opinion on the matter. However, the first palace master frowned and pondered. He refused to answer or express his opinion. The second palace master had no choice but to further clarify the topic. First palace master, I only suspected it before and did not dare to confirm it. However, a month ago, I went to the Fanqing Palace to visit the seventh palace master. I paid special attention and found an excuse to inquire about it. I basically confirmed the answer. That mark is the emblem of the seventh palace master, Dao Xinyan. Chapter 4700. That's right. The mark left at the scene of each missing person case was Dao Xinyan's emblem. In the God realm, there was no one who did not know about that imprint. It represented the supreme God Emperor Nebula. After coming to the planet of origin, Dao Xinyan hid the tens of thousands of soldiers under his command in the Emperor-level artifact that he carried with him. He also never showed his ship to anyone easily. When he came into contact with the Taiyu Shrine, he was very low-key and almost never showed the emblem publicly. However, there were still some valuable items with him that still had that imprint on them. The Lord Hullmaster had the most contact with him, so of course, he had noticed that mark. The second Hullmaster had less contact with Dao Xinyan, but he had seen that mark by chance. Previously, the second Hullmaster felt that the mark was familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Later, he thought of the seventh Hullmaster, Dao Xinyan, but he was not sure. He could only find an excuse to visit Dao Xinyan, and finally confirmed it. The second Hullmaster exposed the answer, and the atmosphere in the secret room became more oppressive. The Lord Hullmaster's face became gloomier, and his eyes became sharper. He stared at the second Hullmaster and asked in a low voice, "So, what do you want to say and do?" Seeing the Lord Hullmaster's expression and reaction, the second Hullmaster understood. It was just as he had guessed. In fact, when he first took the communication jade slip to report the missing people to the Lord Hullmaster and showed him the mark, the Lord Hullmaster already knew who the owner of the mark was. However, the Lord Hullmaster was deliberately protecting the seventh Hullmaster, Dao Xinyan. At that time, the second Hullmaster wanted to ask clearly, but the Lord Hullmaster stopped him. He only asked him to send a few Hullmasters to catch the murderer, and then sent him away. However, no one expected that the three hallmasters would not only fail to catch the murderer, but also let the situation escalate to this point. Now, for the sake of the overall situation, the second hallmaster could only tell the Lord Hallmaster the answer he found from his investigation. Lord Hallmaster, although we did not catch the murderer and did not communicate with him, the Dao Xinyan left the mark every time. But every time the murderer left behind a nebula insignia, it was definitely a hint, or a provocation. This means that the murderer came prepared and deliberately targeted Dao Xinyan. That's why he left his emblem every time. Hearing the second palace master's explanation, the first palace master asked expressionlessly, and then? The second palace master had a headache. He guessed that the first palace master would be angry, but he could only brace himself and continue. Actually, we all understand the killer's intention. He wants to force the seventh palace master, Dao Xinyan, to show himself. If Dao Xinyan continues to avoid him, the killer will continue to cause trouble and kidnap more people. And we don't have any clues at all. It's really too difficult to catch the murderer. Since the second palace master had put it this way, the first palace master could not continue to pretend that he did not understand. He could only ask with a sullen face, "What? Do you mean that if we hand over the Dao Xinyan to the murderer, he won't kidnap people anymore?" The second palace master hurriedly waved his hand. "Lord Palace Master, you've misunderstood. Of course, I didn't mean that." The first palace master said expressionlessly, "Then you want to send Dao Xinyan to the south to search for the murderer with the other three palace masters. In other words, you're sending Dao Xinyan to his death." The second palace master shook his head and explained, "Lord Palace Master, how can this be called sending him to his death? Since Dao Xinyan is the palace master of this palace master, he should step forward bravely to solve the problem for this palace master when there are criminals causing trouble and kidnapping people in our territory. Moreover, the murderer's strength and realm may not be higher than Dao Xinyan's. With the help of the three palace masters, Dao Xinyan has a great chance to catch the murderer and make a great contribution. I think this is a good plan that can be carried out. If Dao Xinyan wants to blame me, he can only blame me for this plan of using him as bait to lure the murderer into the net." The first palace master glanced at him and did not express his opinion on the spot. He only said coldly, "You can leave now. We'll discuss this another day." Obviously, the first palace master wanted to stall for time and figure out the situation first. The second palace master was unwilling, but he could not do anything. He also knew that this matter could not be rushed. He needed to give the first palace master some time to consider, so he could only bow and take his leave. Coincidentally, when the second palace master returned to his residence, a guard came to report that the third palace master had been waiting in the living room for a long time. The second palace master frowned. He thought, isn't the third palace master in seclusion? Why did he suddenly visit in the middle of the night? No matter what, the third palace master must have something important to tell him. Therefore, the second palace master turned and rushed to the living room. When he entered the living room, the third palace master had already finished his cup of tea. After the two of them met, they exchanged a few simple greetings before the third palace master went straight to the point and stated his intentions. "Second palace master, you sent the three palace masters to the south to search for the murderer. It has been 2 months. How's the progress?" "I heard that the situation in the south is getting more and more chaotic, and the people are anxious." The third palace master spent most of his time cultivating in seclusion in the secret room. However, he was also responsible for gathering troops and preparing for the expedition to the Chaos Sea in 20 years. In the process of gathering troops, he also received a lot of news and heard about the chaotic situation in the south. "We can't go on like this. I heard that many people are planning to flee to the north. The normal defense of many branches and towns has been affected. Do you have any plan to catch the murderer as soon as possible?" The third palace master asked with concern. His words revealed his worry and anxiety. The second palace master looked at him and asked solemnly, "Why? Are you also worried about this?" "Of course." The third palace master nodded without hesitation and said earnestly, "The divine hall has been peaceful for so many years. Now that something like this has happened, of course I hope it can be resolved as soon as possible and restore peace. As long as you can come up with a good plan, I can go south at any time to support the three of them." Seeing that the third palace master was so worried and even wanted to go south at any time to support the three palace masters, the second palace master recalled the attitudes of the first palace master and the seventh palace master. He could not help but be a little absent-minded. Seeing that the second palace master did not speak for a long time, the third palace master could not help but ask, "Second palace master, what's wrong? Do you have a good plan?" The second palace master came back to his senses. After hesitating and deliberating for a moment, he lowered his voice and explained, "Actually, I have a plan, and I have already reported it to the first palace master tonight. However, the first palace master still needs some time to think about it. I don't know when he will give his approval." The third palace master was stunned for a moment and quickly asked, "What plan? Why didn't the first palace master agree?" The second palace master explained again, "I believe you have heard that every time the murderer committed a crime, he would leave a mysterious mark at the scene. After investigating, I finally found out the origin of the mark. It was the emblem of the seventh palace master, Dao Xingyun." The third palace master suddenly understood and said in shock, "Dao Xingyun's emblem? That is to say, the murderer came for Dao Xingyun. Sure enough, we were right. We followed in the footsteps of the Shangqing Temple and the Kongming Temple. Dao Xingyun really brought us trouble." Chapter 47:01. Back then, when Qian Zhan returned to the Taiyu secret realm to report, the first palace master secretly summoned the 5 palace masters in the middle of the night to discuss in the secret room. The first palace master mentioned what had happened to the Shangqing Temple and the Kongming Temple. After accepting the foreign god emperor of unknown origins, accidents happened one after another. The Shangqing Temple, in particular, hurriedly explored the Chaos Sea. As a result, they suffered heavy casualties and suffered great losses. At that time, the palace masters were a little worried that there would be any problems if the Taiyu shrine accepted Dao Xingyun, the foreign god emperor of unknown origins. The first palace master suppressed the objections of the crowd and comforted the palace masters. He also proposed a plan to start the operation 20 years later. Everyone thought that there would be no problems under the first palace master's careful plan. However, no one expected that something would still happen to the Taiyu shrine. Dao Xingyun still brought trouble to the temple. More than 800,000 people were kidnapped. Half of the city and a town's people disappeared at the same time. The atmosphere of panic spread to the various temples in the south. Moreover, the 3 palace masters led thousands of elites to the south for 2 months, but they did not even find out what the murderer looked like. It was foreseeable that the 3 palace masters were helpless, and the murderer's evil deeds would continue. If the situation continued to escalate, the south would be in chaos sooner or later. The third palace master blurted out this sentence in a hurry. After he finished speaking, he realized that he was too straightforward. In his position, even if he had this idea, he could not say it out loud. After all, only the 4th palace master and the 6th palace master opposed Dao Xingyun's appointment as the 7th palace master. Fortunately, the 2nd palace master understood his feelings and nodded. "Yes, after I investigated the results, I had the same idea as you. Therefore, after thinking for a long time, I thought of a solution and told the 1st palace master tonight." "What solution?" The 3rd palace master was very interested. He quickly asked and listened attentively. The 2nd palace master lowered his voice and said, "The murderer is obviously targeting Dao Xingyun. I sent Dao Xingyun to the south to join forces with the 4th palace master, the 5th palace master, and the 6th palace master to capture the murderer. Dao Xingyun was a bait to lure the murderer out. However, Dao Xingyun was the seventh hall master and should contribute to the divine hall. It was also his responsibility to catch the murderer. In any case, with the cooperation of the three hall masters, there is no need to worry about his safety. The murderer will also be caught quickly, and the chaotic situation in the south will also be quelled. The third palace master nodded and praised, "That's right." The second palace master's analysis was very reasonable, and this countermeasure was very feasible. But, why didn't the first palace master agree? Doesn't he want to catch the murderer as soon as possible and end the chaos in the south? The second palace master smiled bitterly and said, "Yes, of course I do." However, the first palace master is more concerned about the safety of the seventh palace master. The third hall master was a little speechless. He did not know how to solve the problem, so he could only think to himself, the first hall master treats Dao Xinyan with such importance and care. This has already surpassed his attitude towards us. This is not a good thing. The two of them looked at each other in silence for a while. The third palace master was about to stand up and leave. Before he left, he said to the second palace master solemnly, "Don't worry, second palace master. I support your decision and plan. This matter was originally caused by Dao Xinyan. He brought trouble to me, so of course he has to solve it himself." The second palace master nodded and personally sent the third palace master off. In less than 2 days, the related news spread in the great universe mystery realm. First, it was the generals under the third palace master, then the generals and commanders of the other peaks. After a few more days, even the fourth, fifth, and sixth palace masters who were far away in the south, who were exhausted from running around, also knew that the owner of the mysterious mark was the seventh palace master, Dao Xinyan. For a time, everyone in the great universe mystery realm was talking about it. They all believed that the murderer came for Dao Xinyan. The three palace masters who were still searching for the murderer in the south were also complaining that Dao Xinyan had brought trouble to the divine hall. Especially the fourth and sixth palace masters, they felt a sense of victory. Back then, they had objected to the first palace master appointing Dao Xinyan as the seventh palace master. They were worried that Dao Xinyan would bring trouble to the divine hall. Now, it turned out that their worries were right. Therefore, they bore a grudge against Dao Xinyan for the humiliation they had experienced in the past 2 months. They were extremely resentful. The three palace masters secretly contacted the third palace master and the second palace master to ask for a countermeasure while they were hunting for the murderer. Seeing that the matter had spread, the second palace master did not hide it anymore and told them his idea. After the three palace masters heard about it, they all agreed wholeheartedly. They could not wait to kidnap Dao Xinyan and bring him to the south. However, this countermeasure still needed the first palace master's approval, and the first palace master was reluctant to make a decision. In righteous indignation, the three palace masters jointly sent a message back to the first palace master to agree with the second palace master's plan. The third palace master also contacted the second palace master. The two of them went to the first palace master to ask for the second palace master's approval of the plan. For a time, the 5 palace masters jointly wrote a letter to the first palace master to send Dao Xinyan to the south to participate in the battle as a bait to lure the murderer out. Moreover, the 5 palace masters had sufficient excuses. The slogan they shouted was to maintain the peace and stability of the divine hall. No matter how much the first palace master protected Dao Xinyan, he also felt a lot of pressure in the face of the 5 palace masters joining forces to abdicate. One evening, the sun was setting in the west. Under the towering ancient tree in the backyard of the Fanqing Palace, the first palace master and Dao Xinyan sat at the stone table, drinking tea and chatting. There was not a single guard in the entire courtyard. It was so quiet that one could hear the falling leaves. The atmosphere was solemn and serene. The first palace master was deeply worried. Dao Xingyun also had a bad premonition and looked unnatural. In the end, it was the first palace master who spoke first. He said in a low voice, "I believe you can guess the purpose of my visit today." Dao Xingyun gently put down the teacup in his hand and smiled bitterly. He said, "During this period of time, there were rumors and slanders in all the peaks in the mystic realm. Even if I didn't pay attention, I heard some rumors and roughly understood what was going on. It seems that there is a mysterious powerhouse who is burning, killing, robbing, and kidnapping hundreds of thousands of people in the south. The 3 palace masters have gone to the south to search for the murderer for more than 2 months, but there is no clue. They don't even know who the murderer is, let alone catching him. However, every time the murderer commits a crime, he will leave a mark at the scene. It is said that the mark is my emblem." Of course, the first palace master knew that Dao Xingyun was not a heartless and unscheming person. He must have known about this long ago and secretly thought of countermeasures. He just pretended not to know. Therefore, the first palace master asked again, "What do you think?" Dao Xingyun smiled bitterly and said, "Now, rumors and slanders are flying everywhere. Everyone is saying that I brought disaster to the divine hall and should go to the south to be the bait to lure the murderer out. Then, the 3 palace masters will work together to capture the murderer. Logically speaking, there is no problem with this plan, but..." Chapter 4702. Just as the Lord Hallmaster had guessed, Dao Xingyun knew everything. He was well aware of the plan proposed by the Lien Air Hallmaster, but he did not intend to accept it. However, there are too many suspicious points in this. If we make a decision easily, we will definitely be schemed against by the other party. Dao Xingyun did not directly reject the second Hallmaster's suggestion. Instead, he chose to stall for time. The Lord Hallmaster nodded slightly and said, "Tell me about it." Dao Xingyun analyzed and said, "First of all, very few people know about my emblem. Even among the Hallmasters, you are probably the only one who has noticed it. Therefore, the culprit who committed crimes in the south must have known me before. For example, the foreign race's God Emperor who almost joined the Kongming Temple, and the God Emperor who joined the Shangqing Temple but died tragically in the Chaos Sea. Other than that, there are 2 foreign races God Emperor who have been active in other places. I don't understand why they are targeting me, so I'm trying to contact them and ask them clearly. Before I get to the bottom of this, I can't leave the grand universe mystic realm easily. It's not that I'm afraid of death, but I'm worried that there's a trap and it involves an even greater secret." When he said the words "an even greater secret," Dao Xingyun emphasized his tone. It was obvious that he was hinting at something. The Lord Hallmaster had been thinking about similar questions these few days, speculating the reason why the culprit was targeting Dao Xingyun. In his opinion, the most likely reason was that Dao Xingyun might be closely related to the door of the heavenly Dao and the mystery of eternal life in the Chaos Sea. Otherwise, Dao Xingyun's former friends would not target him in such a way. Other than that, the Lord Hallmaster also reminded Dao Xingyun, "Think about it again. Is it possible that the culprit who wantonly committed evil is your former enemy?" "Enemy?" Dao Xingyun frowned. After thinking for a moment, a figure indeed appeared in his mind. It was a handsome man in a white robe. He was none other than Kenshin, whose name had once shaken the world. However, Dao Xingyun quickly dismissed the idea. He shook his head and said, "I do have an enemy, but it shouldn't be him. He can't have come to the planet of origin." The first palace master frowned. He thought for a moment and asked, "So, you've made up your mind not to leave the Grand Universe secret realm and participate in the war in the south?" Dao Xingyun nodded and replied, "I still want to contact the other 2 God Emperors and ask if they did it. Leaving the mystic realm in a daze and heading south to participate in the war is too passive. We'll definitely fall into a trap." Everyone knew that the murderer in the south wanted to force Dao Xingyun to show himself. It was the safest place for him to stay in the Grand Universe secret realm. The culprit definitely wouldn't dare to invade. The first palace master rubbed his glabella, feeling a slight headache. He had already hinted so clearly. It was reasonable to say that Dao Xingyun should have understood. Since Dao Xingyun insisted on not leaving the mystic realm, he could only say it clearly. Dao Xingyun, your analysis is very reasonable. I also believe your words. However, the 5 palace masters have jointly written a letter asking me to send you to the south to join forces with the other 3 palace masters. As long as you show yourself, the culprit will most likely show himself. The 4 of you will definitely be able to capture or kill him. You don't have to worry about your own safety. The 3 palace masters will protect and assist you. In my territory, no one can deal with the 4 god emperors. I can assure you of this. Hearing this, Dao Xingyun's eyes became gloomy and bitter. So, first palace master, you came to me to give me an order to send me to the south to participate in the war. The first palace master said expressionlessly, I'm not giving you an order. I'm telling you the situation of the temple. You're also one of the palace masters. You have the responsibility and obligation to capture the culprit and rescue the kidnapped people. Isn't that right? Dao Xingyun nodded slightly, and said in a low voice, I understand. The 5 palace masters have jointly written a letter, and countless soldiers are also secretly discussing it. You're also under immense pressure. Logically speaking, this junior should be helping you solve your problems and contribute my meager strength. However, I have a strong premonition that the other party came prepared. This is a conspiracy against me and the temple. He paused for a moment, then continued, rest assured, first palace master. I will definitely not disobey your orders, and will not disregard the interest of the temple. However, if it's possible, I still hope that you can give me some time. Sigh. Since he had already said so much, the first palace master could only sigh and drop the subject. However, in the depths of his heart, his eagerness towards Dao Xingyun had decreased. Dao Xingyun was not a fool. Of course, he knew that by doing so, the first palace master would be disappointed in him. In the future, if he continued to be the 7th palace master, the first palace master's favor and support for him would also decrease. The other 5 palace masters would also criticize him. His future situation would be very difficult. However, these were all things for the future. He was more worried about the present. If the first palace master sent him to the south to participate in the war, and he was killed by the culprit, then everything would be over. What future would there be? In short, saving his life was more important than anything else. The first palace master did not say anything else. He got up and left. Dao Xingyun hurriedly bowed and sent him off. Half a day later. The first palace master was meditating in the secret chamber of the great universe holy palace. The second palace master and the third palace master came to see him. They already knew that the first palace master had personally gone to talk to Dao Xingyun. Now that they had come to see him, it was naturally to ask about the results. After the 2 sides met, they exchanged a few words. The second palace master asked, First palace master, what did Dao Xingyun say? Is he willing to go to the south? The first palace master said expressionlessly, that is my order. How would he dare to disobey? However, he did analyze some principles with me. I also think that we can consider it. The second palace master and the third palace master immediately frowned. They had a bad feeling in their hearts. The third palace master could not wait to ask, First palace master, then you mean? Dao Xingyun wants to delay more time. The first palace master did not answer, but his silence meant that he agreed. The second palace master shook his head repeatedly and said with disappointment, as the 7th palace master, he does not want to help us solve our problems and contribute his strength. When he really needed his help, he would make all sorts of excuses and delay it again and again. What's more, this matter started because of him. How can he do this? How can he do this? The third palace master was also disappointed. He sneered and said, probably in the seventh palace master's heart, only his own life is the most important. The stability and peace of the divine hall and the lives of more than 800,000 people are not worth mentioning. Since he is so cowardly, then I will take the initiative to accompany the seventh palace master to protect and escort him to the south. First palace master, if he still does not agree, then let the second palace master act together. The two of us will join forces to escort him. Chapter 4703. When the third palace master said these words, it was obvious that he was resentful. He was angry at Dao Xinyan's cowardice, so he said such provocative words. The second hall master was in the same position as him, so he would naturally agree with his words to put pressure on the first hall master. That's right. If Dao Xinyan is really afraid, then the third hall master and I will escort him. When we reach the south, the five of us will join forces to help him search for the murderer. When the second hall master said these two sentences, his tone was full of undisguised contempt and sneer. Think about it, a mere celestial thearch-level murderer had caused a huge ruckus in the great universe sacred hall. Other than the first hall master who stayed behind to guard the Taiyu mystery realm, the other 6 hall masters would go all out to catch the murderer. How ironic and shameful was this? Even if the 6 hall masters joined forces to catch the murderer, the Taiyu Shrine's reputation would be ruined. Logically speaking, the first hall master should be angry and order Dao Xinyan to rush to the south. However, to the surprise of the 2 hall masters, the first hall master nodded and said, "Good, I am very pleased that the 2 of you have such determination and courage. I will tell the 7th hall master to leave as soon as possible." Well, if there is nothing else, you can leave. The first hall master obviously did not want to say anything more to the 2 hall masters, so he waved his hand and asked them to leave. The 2 hall masters were a little disappointed. After looking at each other, they shook their heads and smiled bitterly. However, no matter what, they could not be angry at the first hall master, so they could only bow and say goodbye. After walking out of the Taiyu Palace, the 2 hall masters said goodbye to each other at the gate, then flew into the sky and returned to their respective residences. The 2 hall masters' backs were filled with disappointment, loneliness, and desolation. A day later, the first hall master thought about it again and sent a message to summon Dao Xinyan. Previously, he personally went to the Fanqing Palace to find Dao Xinyan in the backyard and talk to him face to face. This time, he ordered Dao Xinyan to go to the Taiyu Palace to see him. The meaning of the two were completely different. With Dao Xinyan's intelligence, of course, he could understand the meaning behind it. Previously, the Lord Hallmaster had gone to the Star Palace to ask for his opinion. This time around, it was likely that the Lord Palace Master had given him an order, and he had no choice but to follow it. As a result, Dao Xinyan's expression was rather unsightly on the way to Taiyu Divine Palace. His eyes were filled with deep worry. Once he entered the Great Universe Divine Palace, he quickly entered the secret room where the first Hall Master cultivated in seclusion. The Lord Hallmaster was still sitting at the top of the altar, looking down at Dao Xinyan who had pushed open the door and entered. Dao Xinyan bowed and asked, "May I ask what orders does Lord Palace Master have for me?" The Grand Palace Master did not want to waste time with him. He said straightforwardly, "This started because of you. Whoever started the trouble should end it. You must go to the south and help the other Palace Masters catch the murderer." Originally, the second Palace Master and the third Palace Master planned to escort you to the south. However, the second Palace Master had to stay behind in the secret realm to preside over the overall situation and deal with various affairs. Therefore, only the third Palace Master can escort you, and this matter must be done as soon as possible. I will give you 3 days. This. Dao Xinyan was very smart. He immediately understood what the Lord Palace Master meant. He guessed that the second palace master and the third palace master had joined forces to pressure the Lord Palace Master to make this decision. Now that things had developed to this point, there was no turning back. He could no longer resist. Seeing that he was silent, the Lord Palace Master frowned and cast a dignified look at him. Dao Xinyan's body stiffened. He knew that he could not avoid this matter. He could only bow and say, "As you command, Lord Palace Master. I will do my best and not disappoint you." Only then did the Lord Palace Master withdraw his dignified look. He closed his eyes and said, "You may leave." Dao Xingyan bowed silently and turned to leave the secret room. After walking out of Taiyu Divine Palace, he stopped outside the gate for a moment. He looked at the sky in the south and sighed silently. If it's a blessing, it's not a curse. If it's a curse, it can't be avoided. What will come will come. Although he knew that the murderer who was wreaking havoc in the south was coming for him, he knew that there must be a conspiracy waiting for him. He also knew that his life would be in danger if he went south this time. However, the murderer did not need to scheme. He only needed to use an open scheme to mess up the Taiyu Shrine and make the 5 palace masters join forces to exclude him. No matter how much the Lord Palace Master tried to protect him, it was useless. This was the situation stirred up by the murderer. Even if he had the idea that he was the only sober person in the world, he could only follow the Lord Palace Master's orders. On the morning of the third day, it was the deadline set by the Lord Palace Master. The third Palace Master had already gathered 3,000 elite godly kings and was waiting at the entrance of the secret realm. After an hour, the 7th Palace Master, Dao Xingyan, arrived late and alone. Seeing his desolate expression, the 3rd Palace Master sneered in his heart, "Heh heh. This guy sure is pitiful." The Deep Star Palace clearly gathered 1 or 2,000 people, but he can't even gather a few dozen guards to accompany him to the south to capture the murderer. The 3rd Palace Master secretly mocked Dao Xingyan. As the 7th Palace Master of the Divine Hall, he had ended up alone, without even a few loyal guards. Dao Xingyan only had himself to blame. He deserved it. But in fact, Dao Xingyan had other thoughts. The Deep Star Palace might have 1 or 2,000 guards and servants, but they were all members of the desolate race. He would definitely not treat them as his trusted aides. On the surface, he was alone, but in fact, the divine item he carried with him hid his 50,000 elite soldiers. That was his trump card. After both parties met, the 3rd Palace Master took the initiative to greet Dao Xingyan. 7th Palace Master, we have been waiting for you for so long. We thought you had a lot of things to prepare, but we never expected you to come alone. Dao Xingyan ignored his sarcasm and said with a deadpan expression, "We are going to the south to capture the murderer, not to tour the world. It's useless no matter how many guards we bring. Furthermore, with the 3rd Palace Master and so many guards escorting us, it can't be any safer. Why would I need to bring any guards?" The 3rd Palace Master did not gain any advantage in his bickering, so he did not say anything more to Dao Xingyan. He waved his hand and gave the order, "Let's board the ship." Following that, Dao Xingyan followed the 3rd Palace Master onto the battleship. The 3,000 elite godly kings also lined up and boarded the divine battleship. Perhaps it was to make the journey more convenient, and to reach the south as soon as possible. The 3rd Palace Master only drove one divine battleship, and it was his flagship. The flying speed of an Emperor-class battleship was of course unparalleled. In just half a month, the 3rd Palace Master's battleship carried more than 3,000 people and arrived in the south. And before this, the news of the 3rd Palace Master escorting Dao Xingyan to the south had already reached the 4th, 5th and 6th Palace Masters. Hidden Warfare had also received the news. Since Hidden Warfare knew of the news, Yi Jingfeng, as his chief advisor, naturally also received the news very quickly. As such, the murderer who had been committing crimes everywhere quickly disappeared. He did not make a move for 8 days. Chapter 4704. Back then, Ji Tianxing had set up a scheme to get the Bo-Ri God Emperor to kidnap the desolate race citizens. It was to force Dao Xingyun to leave the mystic realm and appear in the south. And now, Dao Xingyun was forced to arrive in the south under the third Hall Master's escort. Rather than calling it an escort, it was more appropriate to call it an escort. After all, Dao Xingyun was unwilling, and the third Hall Master did not have the intention to protect Dao Xingyun. Unlike the fourth, fifth and sixth Hall Masters, after they arrived in the south, they rushed to different areas to capture the murderer. The third Hall Master and Dao Xingyun rushed to the Heavenly Strength Hall, where hidden warfare was at the Divine Combat Dragon Palace. The reason for this was because Dao Xingyun wanted to stay in the Divine Combat Dragon Palace, so that hidden warfare could spread the news. Hidden Warfare's mission was to spread the news that the 7th Hall Master had arrived at the Heavenly Strength Hall and was staying in the Divine Combat Dragon Palace to more than 30 halls in the south, letting everyone know. Only by doing so could the murderer know the location of the 7th Hall Master, allowing him to reveal himself. And the 4th, 5th and 6th Hall Masters would have enough time to rush back to the Divine Combat Dragon Palace and hide around the palace in secret, waiting for the murderer to appear. The Hall Masters could set up an inescapable net and wait for the enemy to arrive. As long as the murderer dared to appear, be it to investigate Dao Xingyun or to assassinate Dao Xingyun, he would be captured and killed by the Hall Masters. This idea was thought of by Dao Xingyun, and it was approved by the 2nd Hall Master. After careful consideration, the Hall Masters felt that the idea was feasible. After all, if Dao Xingyun was like them, searching for the murderer everywhere, he would be constantly on the move, and the murderer might not be able to find him. And if he stayed in the Divine Combat Dragon Palace, the murderer would have a clear target and could carry out his plan. Although the murderer was in the dark, and Dao Xingyun was in the open, he would definitely be in a passive position. But if the Hall Masters joined forces and set up an inescapable net in the Divine Combat Dragon Palace, they would have absolute confidence in killing the murderer. However, the problem was that the murderer knew that the 7th Hall Master was in the Divine Combat Dragon Palace, and knew that the Hall Masters would set up an ambush. Xingyun, would he still dare to invade the Divine Combat Dragon Palace and show himself? Initially, the Hall Masters were worried about this problem. However, when the 3rd Hall Master and Dao Xingyun arrived at the Divine War Dragon Palace, they realized that the culprit had not abducted anyone for 8 days. What did this mean? The Palace Masters guessed that the culprit had also received the news and was on his way to the Battle Dragon Divine Palace. Therefore, the Palace Masters were all excited. Currently, only the 3rd Hall Master, Hidden Warrior, and Dao Xingyun were setting up defenses in the Divine Battle Dragon Palace. They were leading the elite Divine Kings to set up the Divine Formation. The 4th, 5th, and 6th Hall Masters were still in the other halls and were on their way back to the Battle Dragon Divine Palace. Based on their speed, it was estimated that they would arrive in 3 days. The Divine Battle Dragon Palace was bustling with activity. The 3rd Hall Master and Dao Xingyun were leading 3,000 elite Divine Kings to build the defensive Divine Formation day and night. Qian Zhan also led the generals to arrange the defense of the Divine Palace and strengthen the patrols. The entire Divine Palace was shrouded in a murderous aura, and there was a sense of oppression as if a storm was coming. As the Southern Patrol Commander, Qian Zhan was under immense pressure. His face was dark all day and he was unable to relax. Firstly, the Palace Masters overseeing the Divine Palace all had higher statuses than him. He had become a general under their command. Secondly, the Palace Masters chose the Divine Battle Dragon Palace as the battlefield. They were waiting for the culprit to walk into the trap. Regardless of whether the few Hall Masters could kill the culprit or not, a great battle between God Emperor powerhouses was definitely unavoidable. Even if the Divine Battle Dragon Palace had all kinds of defensive divine formations, how could it withstand the might of a great battle between the God Emperor? There was no need to guess. When the time came, the mountains and rivers would be razed to the ground and the divine palace would be turned into ruins. After the great battle, it was necessary to rebuild the divine battle dragon palace. In addition, there were tens of thousands of soldiers in the divine battle dragon palace. They were all elites under Qian Zhan. He had spent thousands of years to subdue all the elites and turn them into his trusted subordinates. This great battle between the God Emperor would affect at least thousands of elite soldiers and cause them to lose their lives in the battle. In other words, the few elite forces under Qian Zhan would suffer heavy losses. There was another point. When the palace masters surrounded the culprit, as the Southern Patrol commander, he could not just stand by and watch. He had to participate in the battle. However, he was the weakest God Emperor. He was also the most likely to be injured and killed. If he suffered heavy injuries in the battle, it would affect his divine Tao foundation. It would be very difficult for him to increase his strength in the future. In conclusion, the winner of this operation was unknown. However, the loser would definitely be him. As Qian Zhan's chief advisor, Ji Tianqing was also very busy during this period. On the surface, he was Yi Jingfeng, commanding the soldiers to strengthen the defense. However, in secret, he had already informed the God Emperor of Dao Xingyun's arrival at the Heavenly Dipper Hall 8 days ago. He had also summoned the God Emperor back. Fortunately, the God Emperor was fast enough. One day before the third palace master and Dao Xingyun arrived at the Divine Battle Dragon Palace, the God Emperor arrived at the Divine Battle Dragon Palace overnight. At that time, the Divine Battle Dragon Palace had not entered a state of complete martial law. They also did not set up a defensive formation with great fanfare. Ji Tianqing used his authority to help the God Emperor from the inside. This allowed the God Emperor to easily sneak into the Divine Battle Dragon Palace. After that, the God Emperor entered the distorted spacetime of the Jiutian Tenju Tower. While meditating, he waited for the next attack. Yun Yao and Ji Ke also ended their secluded cultivation. They silently meditated and waited for the right time to attack. They all knew that when they attacked, it would be the time of Dao Xingyun's death. On the evening of the second day, the third palace master's ship arrived at the Divine Battle Dragon Palace with 3,000 guards and Dao Xingyun. After that, the third palace master and Dao Xingyun led the 3,000 elite guards and started setting up the emperor-level defensive formation. They were all calculating when the culprit would arrive at the Divine Battle Dragon Palace. Before the culprit arrived, they should have finished setting up the defensive formation. The fourth, fifth, and sixth palace masters should also have returned to the Divine Battle Dragon Palace. Then, everyone would wait for the culprit to appear and work together to capture or kill him. Everything seemed to be perfect and the plan would go smoothly. However, no one would have thought that the culprit had already entered the Divine Battle Dragon Palace. Today was the second day since the third palace master and Dao Xingyun arrived at the Divine Battle Dragon Palace. In the evening, Ji Tianqing found out from Hidden Warrior that the fourth, fifth, and sixth palace masters would be back in 3 days. He immediately realized that he only had 3 days left. If he could not kill Dao Xingyun in these 3 days, he would not have a chance when the fourth, fifth, and sixth palace masters returned. At that time, even if he tried to kill Dao Xingyun by force, it would end in failure and his life would be in danger. This could not be helped. From the third palace master to the sixth palace master to Dao Xingyun, they were all mid-level God Emperor. Among them, the third palace master was the strongest. He had already condensed 6 Daoist rhymes. No matter how many tricks Ji Tianqing had, it was impossible for him to kill Dao Xingyun under the protection of the 4 palace masters. Tonight was the best time to strike. Chapter 4705. Originally, Dao Xingyun and the third hall master were leading 3,000 elite godly kings to set up a defensive array outside the Divine Battle Dragon Palace. It was an emperor-level array that was used to cover the entire divine battle dragon palace. With the protection of this emperor-level array, the murderer would not be able to sneak into the divine battle dragon palace easily. Even if the murderer wanted to break the array, he would alert the hall masters and expose his whereabouts. The divine battle dragon palace originally had a defensive array, but the grade of the defensive array was too low. It was only a supreme-grade emperor-level array. The murderer who struck fear in people's hearts was definitely a god emperor. A mere emperor-level divine array would not be able to stop him. Originally, the third hall master and Dao Xingyun would be able to set up the array in 4 days with the help of the 3,000 elite godly kings. However, the third hall master and Dao Xingyun were not familiar with each other and had never fought side by side. They were not familiar with each other's methods. Even the way they cast the array was different, not to mention their research and understanding of arrays. Dao Xingyun wanted to set up an array that he was good at according to his ideas. However, the third hall master insisted on setting up an array that he was good at and asked Dao Xingyun to cooperate with him. Dao Xingyun's position was not as high as the third hall master's, and he did not have the support and obedience of the 3,000 elite godly kings. He could only follow the third hall master's orders. Therefore, he started to set up the array according to the third hall master's instructions. He originally thought that he would be able to get away with it after taking a step back. However, he did not expect to have many conflicts with the third hall master in the process of setting up the array. The third palace master used a commanding tone to instruct him and constantly urged him to speed up. However, the two of them had never worked together before. They cultivated the divine Tao using different systems and methods, so they had many opinions and disagreements when setting up the array. After the two of them argued and mocked each other many times, the third hall master became even more aggressive. He no longer gave Dao Xingyun any face and directly criticized and corrected him. Dao Xingyun did not want things to escalate and ruin his plan, so he could only endure it. However, his mentality became worse and worse, and he could not complete his mission on time. When night fell, he argued with the third hall master again. The third hall master was angry and reprimanded him. Dao Xingyun was a middle-stage god-emperor expert after all. How could the seventh hall master of the deity's palace tolerate it without any bottom line? Moreover, many godly kings were present. Many of them were gloating and watching him make a joke's joke. Dao Xingyun was also enraged. He simply threw the task of setting up the array to the third palace master. If the third hall master had led 3,000 elite god kings to set up the formation alone, it would have been impossible to complete it in 4 days. Thus, the third palace master threatened Xingyun to report this matter to the second palace master and the first palace master. Xingyun Xingyun Xingyun. Ziyun Xingyun was Dao Xingyun's Xingyun masters. He Xingyun's was masters was Yun masters Lord Master Xingyun's. Xingyun Xingyun Master Xingyun returned to the Purple Star Palace of the Battle Dragon Divine Palace. He entered a secret chamber to meditate and calm his anger. Xingyun Xingyun Master could not stop the formation. He could only stay outside the Battle Dragon Divine Palace and continue to set up the formation. If he stopped the formation, he would be reprimanded by the first hall master. By then, he would be unreasonable. For the past 2 days, Ji Tianqing had been leading a few generals to strengthen the defenses. However, when he carried out his missions and orders, he never forgot to keep an eye on the third hall master and Dao Xingyun. When night fell, he saw the third hall master and Dao Xingyun quarreling. He also saw Dao Xingyun leave with a black face. Just like that, the two god emperors parted ways and quarreled with each other unhappily. That was why Ji Tianqing saw the opportunity and decided to take action tonight. Very quickly, 4 hours passed. The sky outside the Battle Dragon Divine Palace was still dazzling. Pillars of god power pierced through the night sky. The third hall master and the 3,000 elite guards were still focused on setting up the god formation. Dao Xingyun was in the secret chamber of the Purple Star Palace. After calming down his anger, he closed his eyes and pondered quietly. Although he had his own nature and pride, he had to remain calm and restrained at all times. This was the principle he had always followed. At this moment, he was blaming himself in his heart. He should not have been unable to suppress his anger and had a conflict with the third hall master. He had fallen out with the third hall master because of a moment of anger. Regardless of whether he would be reprimanded by the first hall master, he would leave a bad impression on everyone. The hall masters were already rejecting him. Now that he had a conflict with the third hall master, it would only make his future situation more difficult. Now that the hall masters are rejecting me, even the first hall master is a little disappointed in me. At this time, I should endure the humiliation and pay the price silently. Otherwise, even if we join hands to kill the murderer, they will join hands to ostracize me in the future. Forget it, I will leave the third hall master alone tonight and let him calm down and reflect. Tomorrow morning, I will still have to help him set up the array. These thoughts flashed through Dao Xingyun's mind. He gradually calmed down and calmed down. At this moment, a guard's voice came from the secret chamber's door. Seventh Hall Master, Advisor Chang Feng wishes to see you. Dao Xingyun did not bring any trusted guards. The two guards guarding the secret chamber's door were Qian Zhan's subordinates. Upon hearing the guard's report, Dao Xingyun opened his eyes and frowned. He thought to himself, Advisor Chang Feng. Isn't that Qian Zhan's trusted aide? What is he doing here? While he was puzzled, Dao Xingyun did not think further and said, let him in. As his voice faded, the secret chamber's door was pushed open. A tall desolate race youth entered the secret chamber with his head slightly lowered. Dao Xingyun had previously met Yi Jingfeng. He knew that he was Qian Zhan's trusted aide, but he did not pay much attention to him. After all, those godly king realm generals were not worthy of the god emperor's attention. Dao Xingyun was still sitting cross-legged on the frost jade mat. When Yi Jingfeng came close, he glanced at him and asked, why are you seeking an audience with me in the middle of the night? Actually, he knew in his heart that a mere advisor did not have the qualifications to seek him out. It must be that Qian Zhan had sent this advisor to pass some message to him. As expected, Yi Jingfeng bowed and greeted him. Then, he took out a jade slip and placed it in front of him. Seventh Hall Master, this is something that the governor wants me to pass to you. He said that it has something to do with the murderer's identity. Please take a look. At this moment, Yi Jingfeng was only 3 steps away from Dao Xingyun. What? It has something to do with the murderer's identity? Dao Xingyun's attention was completely attracted by the jade scroll. He did not pay any attention to Yi Jingfeng at all. Furthermore, Yi Jingfeng was only a high-level godly king. He did not think much of him and was not on guard against him. Dao Xingyun frowned and his expression turned serious. His heart was filled with doubt and anticipation as he hurriedly reached out to take the jade scroll. His divine sense invaded the jade slip, and he immediately heard a familiar voice. Dao Xingyun, it's time for you to die. There was no doubt that this was Ji Tianqing's voice. Of course, it could also be said to be Kenshin's voice. Dao Xingyun was stunned on the spot. His eyes widened and his face was filled with astonishment. Chapter 4706. In the past 2 months, Dao Xingyun had speculated and suspected many possibilities. He had once guessed that the person who committed the murder in the south and forced him to show himself, was it the Prajna god emperor? Was it the god of the underworld? Or was it the Jueyang god emperor? Other than these god emperors, no one else should know about his emblem and use such a method to force him to show himself. When he heard that this jade scroll was related to the murderer's identity, he was still wondering if the 3 god emperors had deliberately left it behind. But he never expected that the voice that came from the jade scroll was Kenshin's. Kenshin from more than 1,000 years ago had already fallen. Didn't Kenshin, who had been reborn, unify the 5 continents in the heavenly realm and pacify the situation? How could he appear on the planet of origin? Back then, the 5 god emperors had joined forces and spent 1,000 years to break through the chaotic fog on the planet of origin. There were clearly only 5 of them and their subordinates. Where was Kenshin? Kenshin should still be in the heavenly realm at that time. Therefore, after Dao Xingyan entered the planet of origin, he had forgotten about Kenshin. In his opinion, he and Kenshin were already people from 2 different worlds. Even if another 1,000 years passed, Kenshin would not be able to enter the planet of origin. If Kenshin could enter the planet of origin a few thousand years later, he would have already established a foothold in the Taiyu Shrine and could easily kill Kenshin. Because of this, Dao Xingyan had never thought that Kenshin would be the murderer who stirred up trouble. As a result, when he suddenly heard Kenshin's voice, he was so stunned and shocked. Even his mind went blank for a moment. At this critical moment, Yi Jingfeng, who was 3 steps away from him, suddenly seemed to have changed into a different person, his whole body bursting with a terrifyingly powerful aura. Without any warning, Yi Jingfeng did not even draw out his divine sword. Instead, he stretched out his right hand at an unbelievable speed and stabbed towards Dao Xingyan's forehead. The index and middle fingers of his right hand were pressed together like a sword, emitting a sharp sword light that instantly pierced towards Dao Xingyan. At that time, the earth-shattering sword light was only 3 inches away from Dao Xingyan's forehead. Once the sword light pierced through his forehead, it would go straight to his brain and pierce into his godhead. With Dao Xingyan's strength, Ji Tianqing's all-out attack had a 90% chance of destroying his godhead and killing him instantly. However, Dao Xingyan was a middle-realm god emperor after all. He was not a fake god emperor who had just stepped into god emperor realm with a shallow foundation like Qian Zhan. At the moment of life and death, he finally came back to his senses. Almost without any time to think, he subconsciously dodged. He only tilted his head to the right. With his fastest speed, he moved 3 inches to the right. It was this instinctive tilting of his head that saved his life. Bam! The finger sword in Ji Tianqing's right hand pierced Dao Xingyan's temple. The sword light pierced through his head, and golden blood spurted out. As a god emperor, every move contained the power to destroy heaven and earth. It was so powerful that it could destroy hundreds of thousands of miles and turn mountains and rivers into dust. It was so small that it could be condensed into a square inch. When the power was concentrated at one point, it could pierce through all obstacles. Even though Dao Xingyan's divine body had been tempered thousands of times, his skull was already unimaginably hard. It was comparable to an emperor-level divine artifact. However, Ji Tianqing was unprepared. He launched a surprise attack when Dao Xingyan was unprepared and pierced through his skull. The terrifying sword qi and the power of law exploded in Dao Xingyan's mind. Countless cracks appeared on his skull, and a large amount of brain matter and broken bones splattered out. There was no doubt that Dao Xingyan's divine body died just like that. The violent impact pushed his divine body back more than 10 times, and he crashed heavily into the wall hundreds of feet away. After landing, his corpse rolled a few times on the ground. When it stopped, blood was still flowing out. However, Dao Xingyan was not killed just like that. His divine spark was preserved. Even if there were cracks on the surface and his divine spark was damaged, his power would only be greatly reduced. Being able to survive the attack just now gave him a chance to catch his breath. Swoosh! Under Dao Xingyan's control, his deformed body, which was covered in blood, jumped up from the ground and flew into the air. Even though his divine body was dead, he could still control it with his powerful divine consciousness. However, his appearance looked ferocious. He was covered in blood, and his power had decreased by 50%. He stared at Ji Tianqing with his bulging eyes and bleeding face. He shouted in a hoarse voice, "It's you! It's you!" Kenshin. How did you enter the Star of Origin? When his head was pierced by the sword light, he had already guessed the answer and understood everything. That's right, the murderer was Kenshin. The familiar voice in the jade slip and the peerlessly terrifying and unparalleled sword intent were the best proof. Ji Tianqing was exposed, but he was not anxious or worried. Looking at Dao Xingyun's miserable appearance, he sneered, "Ha ha ha. Isn't it too late to understand the answer now? I've already killed the Shura God Emperor. Tonight, it's your turn." Dao Xingyun stared at Ji Tianqing. He was shocked and angry. His body could not help but tremble. He roared in a hoarse voice, "How did you enter the Star of Origin? And how did you find us? That's not right. You possessed the body of the desolate race's godly monarch and followed Qian Zhan, acting as his advisor. You did not have the chance to abduct the desolate race citizens. The murderer is someone else." Even though he was in danger and could be killed by Kenshin at any time, Dao Xingyun tried his best to remain calm and analyze the crux of the matter. Ji Tianqing could not help but sneer, "You are about to die, and you still have the time to care about this question." As his voice faded, he conjured the burial of heaven's sword and instantly teleported in front of Dao Xingyun. He brandished his sword and stabbed at him. In order to not cause a huge commotion and alert Qian Zhan and the third hall master, he had condensed the power of his sword into a 5-foot-long sword beam. He did not deliberately release it. When he attacked Dao Xingyun, he did not destroy the chamber or the Purple Star Hall. As a result, the two guards guarding the chamber's entrance could only hear some commotion, but they were not sure what had happened. However, this was not the outcome that Dao Xingyun wanted. He knew that he was severely injured and was no longer Kenshin's match. If he did not save him in time, he would definitely die here. Hence, when Ji Tianqing brandished his sword at him, he did not hesitate to use his strongest strength and turn to escape. He rushed towards the wall not far away. The chamber's wall was very strong and was protected by a supreme-grade king-level divine array. However, in order to survive, Dao Xingyun had no choice but to burn his divine power. He transformed into a meteor and smashed through the defensive divine array and the chamber's wall. Suddenly, the violent and raging divine power shockwaves shook the entire palace. Countless cracks appeared on the surface of the palace, and countless pieces of rubble fell from the sky. Phew! After Dao Xingyun rushed out of the Purple Star Hall, he flew out of the divine battle dragon palace like a meteor streaking across the night sky. He knew that the Southern Patrol Governor Qian Zhan could not save him. Only the third hall master could stop Kenshin and help him escape from his predicament. Chapter 4707. When Dao Xingyun broke through the defensive array and rushed out of the Purple Star Palace, the huge commotion woke up more than half of the people in the palace. The guards in the Purple Star Palace were sent flying by the powerful shockwave. Many of them covered their heads and ran away. However, there were still some quick-witted guards who raised the alarm in time. Beams of divine light rose into the sky one after another, exploding into crimson flames high in the sky. That was the signal of an enemy attack. Almost everyone in the War Dragon Divine Palace could see it. As a result, the War Dragon Divine Palace, which was quiet just now, immediately became noisy. When Hidden Warrior was awakened, there was already a hubbub of voices outside. The guards were running around frantically, searching for the culprit. At this time, Ji Tianqing had already intercepted Dao Xingyun, who was running for his life, and launched a fierce attack high in the sky. Spacetime Blade. He teleported in front of Dao Xingyun and waved the Sword of Burial of Heaven with his right hand, slashing out 1,000-meter-long blazing white sword light. Now that they were fighting high in the sky and not fighting indoors, there was no need to worry about destroying the buildings and waking up the guards of the War Dragon Divine Palace. Anyway, those guards were already alarmed. Ji Tianqing only wanted to erupt with his strongest power and kill Dao Xinyun in the shortest time possible. Kaboom! The 1,000-meter-long spacetime blade fiercely cut open the night sky and slashed out a huge spatial crack in front of Dao Xinyun. Dao Xinyun's path was blocked and he could only take a detour to escape. However, before the sword light disappeared, Ji Tianqing raised his left fist and punched Dao Xinyun fiercely. The mountain-sized golden fist contained more than 1,000 types of divine power of laws, the power of the heavenly way, and 2 types of Taoist rhymes. It was truly destructive. Dao Xinyun was locked down by the fist and was also fiercely suppressed, almost unable to move. The main reason was that his divine body was already dead and was now being controlled by his divine sense. Like a divine tool, it could only play a certain defensive role. His combat strength was greatly reduced and he could not dodge at all. At this critical juncture, he could only circulate his remaining god force to form a defensive light barrier to protect his godhead. Boom! Almost at the same time as the defensive light shield was formed, the huge golden fist aura drowned Dao Xinyun and hit him hard. A deafening explosion resounded through the clouds. The shield formed by Dao Nebula's divine power was smashed into pieces in an instant. Then, his body was blasted away. In the process of his body flying backward, he was unable to withstand and dissolve the terrifying power and exploded into countless pieces on the spot. Blood rained down from the sky. Destructive shockwaves wrapped around Dao Xinyun's godhead and spread out, sweeping across the entire Divine Battle Dragon Palace. Although every building in the Divine Palace was protected by a defensive array, it was only a king-level array. How could it withstand the shockwaves of a battle between God-Emperor powerhouses? Thus, the situation that Hidden Warfare was most worried about appeared. Under the violent shockwaves, the palaces and lofts collapsed one after another, turning into ruins and kicking up clouds of dust. More than 2,000 God King Realm guards and hundreds of Divine Lord Realm servants were also unlucky. After being swept by the shockwaves, they suffered heavy casualties. In the blink of an eye, nearly half of the palaces and residences in the Divine Battle Dragon Palace were destroyed by the shockwaves. The entire Divine Battle Dragon Palace was in chaos. Countless guards were scared out of their wits. They completely ignored the orders and scoldings of their generals and fled in panic. Even though Hidden Warfare rushed into the sky and saw the situation clearly, he was powerless to command the soldiers to launch a counterattack. His roar of command was completely drowned out by the deafening clamor. Helpless, Hidden Warfare could only give up on commanding the guards. His divine sense covered the entire Divine Palace and quickly found his target. He saw a familiar figure in the sky. He was holding a black divine sword and chasing after a colorful godhead. When he saw the figure clearly, Hidden Warfare was stunned. He was almost petrified on the spot. Jingfeng. How could it be him? How is this possible? Hidden Warfare was dumbfounded. He could not accept this result at all. Jingfeng, who was loyal to him and had handled many government affairs for him, was chasing after the 7th Hall Master's godhead. Something seemed to be wrong. The 7th Hall Master's body was destroyed and only the godhead was left. Such a horrifying and shocking thing made Hidden Warfare temporarily lose his ability to think. But he quickly recovered. No matter what the reason was, what secrets and twists there were, he did not have time to find out. Without hesitation, he took out his spear and rushed toward Jingfeng in the sky to intercept him with all his might. At the same time, 100 miles away, the 3rd Hall Master who was casting a spell in the sky was also alarmed by the change in the Divine Battle Dragon Palace. What's going on? Who's fighting with who? And it's causing such a big commotion? The 3rd Hall Master stopped casting spells and turned to look at the Divine Palace. He released his divine sense to check the situation and muttered to himself. Could it be that Dao Xinyun, that bastard, has lost his mind and is venting his anger on Hidden Warfare? As he muttered to himself, his divine sense detected that there was a god-emperor expert in the divine palace who was chasing after a godhead with a very familiar aura. Moreover, hidden warfare was also holding his spear and rushing forward with a roar to intercept the somewhat familiar god-emperor. The third hall master was stunned for a moment before he reacted. It's Dao Xingyun. His divine body was destroyed and only the godhead was left. The murderer. That guy is the murderer. He was indeed the third hall master of the Taiyu shrine. In such a short time, he had figured out the situation and the truth. Without hesitation, the third hall master threw away the things in his hands and used his teleportation ability. He instantly crossed the night sky and appeared in the sky above the divine battle dragon palace. How dare you? I'm here, so why don't you surrender now? He had already detected that the somewhat familiar murderer was only a middle-level god-emperor. Therefore, he, who had condensed 6 Taoist rhymes, had absolute confidence that he could kill the murderer. However, to the third hall master's surprise, the other party turned a deaf ear to his roar and chased after Dao Xingyun's godhead, attacking it fiercely like a storm. Dao Xingyun was forced to retreat and could only escape from the divine palace. In the process of escaping, he used all kinds of divine powers and ultimate skills, but they were all defeated. The injuries on his godhead continued to worsen and his strength became weaker and weaker. Damn it! The third hall master shouted angrily and was about to give chase. At this moment, a feminine voice suddenly came from the night sky behind him. An extremely sharp sword intent that attacked the divine soul tore the night sky behind him apart and went straight for his head. The third hall master subconsciously raised his palms and condensed a huge light shield. He turned around and looked at the attacker. Kaboom! Almost at the same time as he turned around, a 30-meter-long purple sword light pierced his divine shield. With a crisp cracking sound, the 30-meter-long sword light shattered inch by inch and splashed into the night sky. His shield trembled violently and he was forced back tens of thousands of meters. Chapter 4708. Although the third palatial master had been blasted back 100,000 feet by the sneak attack, he was not injured. Even his divine power shield did not shatter. It was just that its strength was greatly reduced. There was no other way. After all, he had cultivated for more than 60,000 years. He was a god-emperor who had condensed 6 Tao charms. His strength was extremely robust. Even so, when he saw the attacker's true appearance, he was still somewhat shocked. The person who had stabbed out with a stunning sword was a peerless beauty. She was dressed in a purple dress and had a peerless beauty. She was elegant and cold. She was like a goddess that was independent of the world. She was noble, distant and cold. The red mole in the middle of her eyebrows made her cold and elegant, but it also added a hint of charm. The third palatial master did not know this woman, but he knew that she was not from the desolate race. She was from the same race as Dao Xingyun, and she had the strength of 4 Dao charms. It looks like there is more than one murderer. There are 2 mid-level god-emperors with 4 Dao charms. Such young god-emperors, and there are so many of them. The Lord Palatial Master's hometown sure is amazing. After the third Palatial Master retreated 100,000 feet, he flicked his wide sleeves and stared coldly at the purple-dressed woman. These thoughts flashed through his mind. Without a doubt. The purple-dressed woman with a mole in the middle of her eyebrows was the Pan-Roa God Emperor. In Ji Tianqing's plan for tonight, she was responsible for one of the most important parts, which was to stop the third Palatial Master. He did not expect her to defeat the strong as the weak. As long as she could stall for time, Ji Tianqing would be able to kill Dao Xingyun. You are such a beauty, so why are you a thief? My Lord Palatial Master and the Lord Palatial Master came from the same place as you. If you are willing to surrender, I can recommend you to join my Lord Palatial Master. How about that? At this moment, the third palatial master stared at the Pan-Rua god emperor and said with a dignified tone. "Humph." The Pan-Rua god emperor did not bother to reply. She snorted coldly to express her rejection. Her left hand formed a divine seal and her right hand held a divine sword. She locked onto the third palatial master's aura as her body emitted a surging fighting spirit. The third palatial master understood her attitude and knew that she would never surrender. "You're so stubborn. Prepare to die." The third palace master let out a furious roar and took out two silver-curved blades. His entire body emitted a powerful divine aura as he brandished the blades and charged toward the Prajna god emperor. The divine might and aura of a god emperor exploded in the center of the divine battle dragon palace, sweeping across a radius of several thousand kilometers. In an instant, the whole war dragon divine palace was on the verge of collapse. Half of the surviving buildings flickered with divine radiance. Cracks appeared on the high walls and the ground cracked. The vast majority of the pressure was like a mountain, ruthlessly pressing down on Hanya god emperor, making it difficult for her to unleash her full strength. However, with her powerful spirit and willpower, she did not retreat at all. She still bravely brandished her divine sword and began a battle with the third palace master. The two god emperors both gave it their all, unleashing their most powerful divine abilities, releasing divine light that blotted out the sky, clashing fiercely in the night sky. Boom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the divine light that filled the skies suddenly shattered, exploding into billions of fragments that swept through everything within a radius of several thousand kilometers. The war dragon divine palace, which had already been half destroyed, was naturally not spared. The remaining palaces and residences were all destroyed into ruins. Broken walls, bricks, and debris were everywhere. Dust filled the sky, and screams could be heard incessantly. Another 1,000 or so guards and servants who did not manage to escape in time were blasted into pieces by the violent shockwaves. Most of the guards had already fled several thousand kilometers, or even tens of thousands of kilometers away. Even though they were also swept away by the shockwaves, their casualties were significantly reduced. Hidden Warfare performed very bravely at the critical moment and did not let down his duty as the Southern Patrol commander. Although he knew that the culprit was a mid-level god emperor, he had only condensed one Taoist rhyme and could not stop her. But he still pursued without hesitation and followed Ji Tianqing and Dao Xingyan's godheads, leaving the War Dragon Divine Palace several thousand kilometers away. Just as he was getting closer and closer to Ji Tianqing, two divine lights suddenly appeared in the night sky 100 kilometers in front of him, launching a pincer attack on him. On one side was a sword light that blotted out the sky, and on the other side were divine flames and spear shadows that soared into the sky. Moreover, the two people attacking him were both God Emperor level experts. Fortunately, the other party's strength was not that much stronger than his. Hidden Warfare was shocked, but he quickly reacted and used all his strength to attack. Rumble! He brandished his divine spear, unleashing a sky full of spear lights that clashed with his opponent's divine art attack, creating a deafening explosion. Divine light fragments that blotted out the sky scattered down like a gorgeous meteor shower. The violent impact destroyed a dozen or so mountains around him, and he was also forced back several thousand meters. Hidden Warfare's divine power was a little chaotic. After retreating several thousand meters, he hurriedly suppressed it and adjusted his breathing. Taking this opportunity, he clearly saw the two God Emperor level experts who attacked him. They were two beautiful women. One was wearing a white dress, as perfect and holy as the bright moon. The other was wearing a fiery red dress, holding a divine spear, like a matchless flame that surged into the sky. Hidden Warfare was full of shock and disbelief. Heavens! How did four God Emperor level experts appear overnight? That murderer is not acting alone at all. He has 3 accomplices. The 2 women besieging him were only at the initial God Emperor level, and it seemed that they had only condensed one Dao rhyme. But no matter what, they were still genuine God Emperor level experts. One had to know that he was the only God Emperor under the command of the Taiyu Shrine in the past 20,000 years. Forget it. I've already done my duty by chasing after Dao Xinyun. Anyway, I'm not Yi Jingfeng's match even if I chase after them. There's no need to risk my life with these two women. I should think of a way to save my life and go back to the third palace master. After making up his mind, Hidden Warfare decided to give up on rescuing Dao Xinyun and focus on dealing with the two female God Emperor level experts in front of him. Both sides did not communicate and soon began to fight. Yin Yao and Ji Ke's strong attacks forced Hidden Warfare to retreat step by step, and he had no way to counterattack. Hidden Warfare did not want to fight head-on either. He only wanted to preserve his strength and retreat while fighting to go back to the third palace master. On the other side, 50,000 miles away from the Divine War Dragon Palace, Ji Tianqing was still chasing after Dao Xinyun in the night sky. Dao Xinyun only had a damaged godhead left, but he risked everything and burned his lifespan without hesitation, erupting with his last bit of strength. He was like a shooting star streaking across the night sky, constantly teleporting, and his speed had reached the limit. He knew that even if Hidden Warfare chased him out of the palace, he could not help him. Only the third palace master could save him, but there was no sign of him. He was filled with grief and indignation, cursing the third palace master in his heart. Wasn't it just some personal grudges and a few arguments? Yet he did not save him. He was simply using someone else to do the dirty work. It was too despicable. The desolate race was indeed unreliable. Upon thinking of this, Dao Xinyun thought of the few God Emperor level experts who had entered the planet of origin with him. He suddenly understood some of the problems that he could not figure out in the past. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.